Chapter 439. Goodbye. Song Shuichin Feng had never imagined that the exotic, desolate spirit Qi would have such a miraculous effect. Since that was the case, he had to go to the divination pavilion no matter what. However, he did not know if he was qualified to join the Yin City Guild as an outsider. Hey, old devil, if the divination pavilion opens, do you have a way for me to sneak in? Qin Feng asked inwardly. Don't worry. For such a big matter, there must be a way even if there is no way. Demon Eye's answer made Qin Feng sigh in relief. As long as Demon Eye could get him into the divination pavilion, he would not think of any other way. After all, even if he could, he did not want to represent the other clans. He was just a loose cultivator who came from 100,000 Bear Mountains. He had no background. If he helped any clan, he would definitely be displeased by their enemy. He was a loner, and the last thing he wanted was to be involved in the secret struggles of other clans. Due to various reasons, we must obtain a divination token this time. It will be worth it no matter how much we have to pay. Moreover, Song Su suddenly stopped speaking. Qin Feng looked at him and asked, "Moreover what?" After hesitating for a long time, Song Su sighed and said, "This is related to the survival of our Song clan." Qin Feng was shocked. That's an exaggeration. Your clan is still a great clan. You can't be in danger of being exterminated just because you can't enter the divination pavilion. Song Su shook his head and said in a low voice, "The divination pavilion opens once every 50 years. In a sense, it's a big reshuffle of the major forces in Great Yin City. Do you know that the Zhou clan and the Supreme Mystery Sect managed to enter the top 8 100 years ago and 50 years ago? That's how they managed to develop to their current level. Our Song clan failed 50 years ago. If we can't obtain a slot this time, it will be a great blow to our clan's development. The Imperial family will not support the Song clan anymore. You should know that once a large clan shows the slightest signs of decline, those who covet it will surely pounce on it like hungry wolves and divide it up cleanly. Moreover, the Song family and the Mo family have been fighting for several hundred years. According to the news we received, the Mo family has also invited experts. Moreover, they have contacted a number of relatively powerful families to target us. They want to prevent us from entering the top 8 and obtaining a slot to enter the secret pavilion. If we fail, the first to take action against us will likely be the Mo family." Qin Feng was stunned. He didn't expect there to be such a big reason behind this. Therefore, as long as there is the slightest possibility of helping the family survive this crisis, the elders in the family will do whatever it takes. Now that the Yu family is proposing a marriage alliance, how can we refuse? Song Su asked in a low voice. Qin Feng was silent for a while. Looking at Qin Feng, Song Su paused for a moment, then suddenly said, "But if Brother Qin Feng can represent our Song family in the war, then we'll have another layer of protection." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "I've said it before. I don't want to get involved in the conflicts between your clans. Brother Qin Feng, you're afraid of retaliation from the opposing forces, right? Don't worry. As long as you help the Song family in the war, you'll be our benefactor. The Song family will definitely guarantee your safety," Song Su said. "This is only one of the reasons. I have my own matters to attend to. Moreover, I can't stay here for long." Qin Feng shook his head and refused. Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the others still didn't know the news. He couldn't stay here for long. Moreover, unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to get involved in the conflicts between his clans. This was the bottom line that he insisted on for someone without any background to minimize the risk to himself. He wasn't afraid of trouble, but he definitely wouldn't cause trouble, especially when it came to political matters. Who could guarantee that if he got involved, he wouldn't become an abandoned pawn of the various clans? Brother Qin Feng, in that case, we won't stay here. Song Yuan interrupted Song Su and secretly shook her head. Then she said, "Go see little Shui. I'm sure she'll be very happy to know that you're here. Xiaoyan, take Qin Feng to see your sister. Goodbye." Qin Feng cupped his hands and left with Song Xiaoyan. "Little Yuan, if Qin Feng can help us, our chances of entering the top 8 will be greater. Why did you?" Song Su looked at Song Yuan with dissatisfaction. The latter rolled her beautiful eyes and said, "You still don't know what kind of person Qin Feng is. If he wanted to, he would have come back with us. To put it nicely, he's a careful person who won't cause trouble for himself. To put it bluntly, he doesn't trust anyone but himself. If you say too much, it's easy to make him dislike you." Song Su heard this and nodded slightly. "Then what do you think we should do? Qin Feng isn't an ordinary person. His future achievements will probably surpass ours. If he can stay in the Song family, it will definitely be very beneficial for the development of our clan." "Of course I know, but I can't say too much to him," Song Yuan said unhappily. She thought for a while and said, "He's here for Xiao Xue. The breakthrough still lies with Xiao Xue. Brother, I have a plan, but I don't know if it will work." "Little Yuan, isn't this a little too mean?" Song Su's eyes widened. Song Lin also opened her mouth slightly and stared blankly at Song Yuan. Song Yuan pursed her lips and said with a smile, "It is indeed a little mean, but who knows if it will be the right choice for them in the future. Moreover, if this succeeds, Xiao Xue's marriage may be cancelled." Qin Feng followed Song Xiaoyan to a quiet bamboo forest. A cool breeze blew, and the fragrance of the air made them feel refreshed. "This is where my sister and I practiced when we were young. She often comes here," Song Xiaoyan said. Qin Feng raised his head and soon saw an open area deep in the bamboo forest. A beautiful figure sat on a stone bench with her back facing them. "Sister," Qin Feng covered Song Xiaoyan's mouth and said to him with a smile, "Little guy, let's go back." Song Xiaoyan looked at him and then at his sister. Then he nodded and left. Qin Feng walked in slowly and stood behind Song Xue. He hadn't seen her for a while, and she seemed to have become thinner. Qin Feng sighed softly. He walked forward and patted her shoulder gently. "Xiaoyan, stop fooling around. I'm thinking about something. Don't disturb me," Song Xue said without turning her head. Her tone was commanding. Qin Feng smiled and said, "I didn't expect Xiao Xue to have such a strict side." Song Xue's delicate body suddenly stiffened. She slowly turned her head. When she saw Qin Feng's smiling face, her eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of disbelief. You? Song Xue's red little mouth was wide open. This familiar face made her absent-minded all of a sudden. Qin Feng waved his hand in front of her and said with a smile, "Why? We haven't seen each other for such a short time, and you don't remember me?" "How was that possible, big brother Qin Feng?" Song Xue came back to her senses and quickly stood up. Perhaps her brain was not completely connected to her body. When she stood up, she staggered and almost fell. Qin Feng quickly supported her and said with a smile, "I can't tell from your expression that you're happy at all." The familiar smell made Song Xue completely come back to her senses. This was not a dream, but real. Big brother Qin Feng really appeared in front of her. Chapter 440. Scandal from the heavens. The moment the little girl saw Qin Feng, tears streamed down her face. So many days of grievances, unwilling to express in front of her family, could only pour out in front of an outsider. This in itself was a very ironic thing. Song Xue lay in Qin Feng's arms and cried for a long time before she stopped. She wiped her tears and asked, "Big brother Qin Feng, why are you here?" "I came to see if you need my help." Qin Feng looked at Song Xue and said seriously, "As long as you don't want to, as long as you want to leave, I will take you away." Song Xue stared at Qin Feng in a daze. After a long time, she shook her head and said helplessly, "I can't abandon my family. Little Xue, you don't have to bear so much alone. This is the sorrow of being a disciple of a large family. There are some things that I must bear." With a bitter smile on her face, Song Xue drew in a deep breath as a smile appeared on her face. "Big brother Qin Feng, you have to stay here for a few more days." Looking at the fake smile on her face, Qin Feng nodded lightly. He sighed bitterly in his heart. He wanted to help her, but he didn't know where to start. He could only watch as she became a sacrifice for the family's interests. After chatting with Song Xue for an entire afternoon, the little girl was much more cheerful. Her smile was no longer forced. Obviously, Qin Feng's arrival made her very happy. The setting sun shone golden rays into the green bamboo forest, creating a unique scenery. Qin Feng sat on a swing made of bamboo. He glanced at the silhouettes that appeared in the distance. After a moment of silence, he said to Song Shui, who was beside him, "Little Shui, as long as you are willing, I will do as you wish. This promise will be valid until you get married." Big brother Qin Feng, Little Shui knows that you are good to Little Shui, but Song Shui shook her head and said softly, "As a disciple of a large family, I must put the family's interests first. This time, if it was Sister Song Yuan or Sister Song Lin, they could only accept it." Hearing this, Qin Feng didn't say much. He raised his head and looked at the few people walking over. Among them were Song Su, Song Yuan, an old man, and a middle-aged man. Third elder, second uncle. Song Shui hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. Qin Feng cupped his fists and looked at them indifferently without saying anything. Both third elder and Song Yi were sizing up Qin Feng, nodding their heads continuously. The former smiled and said, "I have long heard of little brother Qin Feng's performance at the Scarlet Flame Mountain Range. Seeing you today, you are indeed not an ordinary person." "Senior, you flatter me," Qin Feng replied calmly. The two of them seemed to have expected Qin Feng's indifference, so they didn't mind it. Lin Lin said, "Little brother Qin Feng has saved our Song family's disciples twice in the Scarlet Flame Mountain and even gifted us 2 leaves of the heaven-blending grass. The Song family will definitely remember this kindness. Today, we will set up a banquet to welcome little brother. Seniors are too polite. I only came to see Song Shui. You saved our Song family's disciples at the Scarlet Flame Mountain Range, including my willful daughter. Today, little brother has come to our Song family. If we don't show our gratitude, outsiders will think that our Song family doesn't know how to be grateful. Little brother, you must give us this face." Song Yi said. Seeing their insistence, Qin Feng didn't refuse. It could be seen that the Song family had put a lot of effort into this banquet. Many of the upper echelons were present. As for the main character of the banquet, Qin Feng was surrounded by many people and toasted him. During the banquet, some of the older generation of the Song family vaguely mentioned Flame City's guild, wanting him to participate in the Song family's behalf. Regarding this, Qin Feng vaguely declined, indicating that he didn't want to get involved in the conflicts between the different families. The next day, Qin Feng woke up with a headache. He got up and washed his face. Only then did his groggy head become much clearer. This wine really can't be drunk carelessly. He bitterly smiled and tidied his clothes. Just as he was about to leave, a pretty maid dressed as a maid walked in. After seeing Qin Feng, she revealed a timid expression and said in a small voice, "Son-in-law, Xiaobai is here to help son-in-law freshen up." "No need." Qin Feng hurriedly waved his hand. Suddenly, his hand stopped in midair. His eyes widened as he said, "Little girl, what did you just call me?" "Son-in-law, who is it?" "Brother Qin Feng, did you sleep well last night?" Song Su's laughter came from outside. Soon after, he and Song Yuan walked in. "You guys came at the right time." Qin Feng hurriedly let the two in and asked, "How did I become your family's son-in-law?" "This." Song Su waved his hand, indicating for the maid to leave. Then he bitterly smiled at Qin Feng and said, "It's our fault. After we came back, we don't know who spread the word that you only saved us time and time again because you like Xiao Shui." Later, in order to prevent the marriage between the Song and Yu families, the Mo family exaggerated even more. They said that Yu and Song Shui had already privately agreed to marry each other and were already the Song family's son-in-law. The Song family was in a hurry to marry Song Shui off because she had an affair with you. Especially when you came back this time. People with ulterior motives said that you knew about Song Shui's marriage and wanted to stop it. Qin Feng was stunned when he heard this. Wasn't this King matchmaking? You repeatedly risked your life to save Xiao Shui. It's very easy for people to make the connection, Song Yuan said at an inappropriate time. In the room, Qin Feng looked at Song Yuan and Song Su with a stunned expression. In the end, he couldn't help but say, "How can this be blamed on me? She saved me and gave me medicine. Shouldn't I help her?" Of course we know, but the outside world doesn't. No matter what, Such rumors will have a big impact on Xiao Shui's reputation. You should at least give us an explanation to the outside world. Song Yuan said seriously. Qin Feng sighed helplessly and said to the two of them, "What explanation can I give you? I didn't do anything at all. You can't blame me for affecting Xiao Shui's reputation. We can't blame you. We can testify for you. But whether it's true or not, as long as this matter spreads, the girl will be the one at a disadvantage. Now that the Yu family is furious because of this, we need to give them an explanation. Even if this matter passes, what do you want Xiao Shui to do? What will people say about her?" Song Su said helplessly. "Although you're innocent and the matter was deliberately exaggerated by people with ulterior motives, it still has something to do with you. Then what can I do? You can't expect me to marry her." Qin Feng spread out his hands and said, "Besides, even if I'm willing to take a loss and accept her, she won't agree. He was doing a good deed and knew how to repay kindness. How'd he get himself into trouble?" Qin Feng was depressed and didn't believe it. "What if Xiao Shui agrees?" Song Yuan suddenly said with a strange tone. Qin Feng spat out a mouthful of tea and looked at Song Yuan in a daze. Even Song Su was astonished. "Hey, you can't say such things carelessly." "I'm not speaking carelessly." Song Yuan looked at Qin Feng with a serious expression and said softly, "At least you're more likable than the second heir of the Yu family, Yulan. As for Xiao Shui's marriage, the family has always prioritized the Yin City Guild. If there's an additional guarantee, the marriage with the Yu family might not go through. If Xiao Shui had to choose between you and Yulan, who do you think she would choose?" Chapter 441. The storm. Qin Feng's face twitched. He glanced at Song Yuan and said, "You guys are selling your girl. Compared to the Yu family, I'd rather sell little Shui to you." Song Yuan said without blushing. Rolling his eyes, Qin Feng finally understood the purpose of Song Su and Song Yuan's visit. What explanation? They clearly wanted him to fight for their Song clan. However, this kind of scandal would definitely affect the girl the most. They were right about this. "I'm not that powerful. I don't have the confidence to help the Song family get a Tianji token." Qin Feng shook his head. If even a big family like theirs didn't have the confidence, he didn't think he could turn the situation around by himself. "You're not that powerful?" Song Yuan looked at Qin Feng suspiciously, but she was criticizing him in her heart. From the trip to Scarlet Flame Mountain, if you don't have the strength, then the Song family is doomed. However, Song Yuan couldn't be bothered to discuss the matter of strength with him. She said softly, "It doesn't matter whether I have it or not. The news has already spread, and little Shui's reputation will definitely be affected. The only thing we can do now is for you to secretly leave and let this matter fade away. As for how the Yu family treats little Shui in the future, that will depend on her luck." "Little Yuan, aren't you just letting outsiders think that Qin Feng abandoned little Shui? Will the Yu family still agree to this marriage? How will she marry in the future? What can we do?" The longer Qin Feng stays here, the easier it will be for people to believe that he has an affair with little Shui and is the son-in-law of the Song family. But if Qin Feng secretly leaves, won't it prove that he abandoned little Shui? At least if he's not here, it won't create trouble for people with ulterior motives. Time will slowly fade away. Hearing the two arguing, Qin Feng waved his hand and said, "You two don't have to put on a show here. How can I leave after such a thing happened? Then help us fight. Only then can we use the identity of external help from the Song family to keep you here and explain this matter to the outside world." Song Yuan nodded and said, "You might not be able to do it alone, but you have my brother. If you work together, there is a 70 to 80% chance of success." "That's right. If we have Brother Qin Feng's help, we won't be afraid, even if some families are scheming against us," Song Su said with a smile. As for Qin Feng, although he had never fought with him before, he had clearly seen Qin Feng's performance and knew that he was definitely not weaker than him, perhaps even stronger, even though he had broken through to the half-step 9th stage heavenly realm. Qin Feng helplessly rubbed his forehead. After thinking for a while, he said, "I will think of a way to clarify this matter and give the Song clan an explanation. As for helping the Song clan to participate in the Yin City Guild, let's forget about it. As a loose cultivator with no background, I do not wish to participate in the conflicts between your clans. And that's fine, as long as you can explain it clearly and clear little Shue's name. Song Yuan did not ask for anything else. Soon, Qin Feng used the Song family's channels to make a statement to the public. He told everyone that because he had received Song Shue's favor, he protected her without any hesitation. As for the rumors that he had gotten rid of Song Shue and that Song Shue had an affair with him, they were all false. However, after this news was released, it did not cause much of a stir. Instead, it was magnified by some people who tried to analyze the meaning behind his words. In the end, it was misinterpreted as Qin Feng deliberately hiding his ambiguous relationship with Song Shue. Moreover, the Yu family also responded to this matter and demanded an explanation from the Song family. Since it involved a prestigious family like the Yu family, it was obvious that this matter was not baseless and was likely to be true. Moreover, some people who had good relations with the Song family revealed that the Song family had always referred to Qin Feng as young master. As a result, the rumor that Qin Feng was the Song family's young master was further confirmed. With regards to this situation, Qin Feng was also helpless. He did not expect that his clear explanation would be misinterpreted in such a manner. Some of the higher-ups of the Song family were also confused about this situation. They did intend to rope in Qin Feng, but how did he become the young master? In the end, Qin Feng also gave up explaining. No matter how much he said, it would be seen as a cover-up. Moreover, he gradually felt that the whole thing was being manipulated by someone in the dark, or rather, it was leading the public opinion in the direction of this matter. Who did it? In the room, Qin Feng frowned. He kept feeling that there was a mastermind behind this. Otherwise, why would so many problems arise as soon as he appeared? It was all about him and Song Shue. The Song family should be able to rule it out. They were preparing for a marriage alliance with the Yu family, so it was impossible for such a thing to happen at this time. Qin Feng guessed that there must be a family that wanted to destroy the marriage alliance between the Song family and the Yu family. Originally, this was a good thing for Qin Feng. However, with such a big pot of *T falling on his head, he could not feel happy. This matter caused his relationship with Song Shue to become very awkward. The little girl ran away as soon as she saw him, and she did not see him for a few days. Qin Feng had no choice but to temporarily stay in the Song family. Usually, the people he came to visit were Song Su, Song Yuan, Song Lin, and the other younger generation disciples. As for the higher-ups of the Song family, they rarely appeared after the welcoming banquet. In half a month, the Yin City Guild would be held. All the major families were preparing. Before this, Qin Feng had already expressed his stance to the Song family. He did not want to get involved in the matters of the major families, so he would not participate in the Yin City Guild. However, although he did not participate, rumors about him and Song Shue had been flying around for the past few days. Some things, as fake as they were fake, became real. No matter what, the ones who were hurt by this kind of thing were all girls. In addition, Qin Feng came to the Song family at this time. The outside world said that Qin Feng was the son-in-law of the Song family. No one knew how the Song family dealt with this matter. In any case, the Yu family had already said that the Song family did not care about morality and etiquette. This action was a disgrace to the Yu family, and they would make a decision during the punishment meeting. The Yu family had a lot of connections, and many other families were secretly supporting them. As for the Mo family, they directly stood on the Yu family side and said in public that the Song family had let Song Shue marry into the Yu family. This was an insult to the Yu family's reputation, and the Mo family had to seek justice for the Yu family. Everyone in Great Yin City knew that other than the Song family, the Mo family, the Zhou family, and the Supreme Mystery Sect, there were also the Yu family, the Lei family, and the House of Bai, which are famous families with royal bloodlines. Other than that, there were also the Wang family, the Sword Sect, and other forces. Although their influence was slightly weaker than the four top forces, their overall strength was not far off. The Yu family and the Lei family were old friends, and the Wang family was on good terms with the Sword Sect. If one thought about it carefully, the Song family had offended the Yu family, the Lei family, the Mo family, and the Wang family. During the Yin City Guild meeting, these four forces would definitely make a move against the Song family. Chapter 442. Night talk. Now that the situation had developed to this point, many people naturally understood why the rumors had been so fierce in the past few days. However, no one bothered to distinguish whether it was true or false because it wasn't important to them. Who wouldn't seize the opportunity to eliminate the great forces that were suppressing them? Some other powers were also eager to take action. If the Song family failed to enter the top 8, they would lose the opportunity to enter the secret pavilion's baptism. The development of this generation was worrying, and the royal family would no longer support them. Naturally, the various powers wanted a share of the Song family's bountiful foundation. Although the Song family appeared to be flourishing on the surface, in reality, it was already in a precarious situation. The Song family's upper echelons were also vexed over this matter. However, they had no other choice. The other party wouldn't listen to any explanations. Qin Feng could no longer control the public opinion in the outside world, so he simply ignored it. Let the other party spread whatever they wanted. The Song family and the Yu family were in a deadlock. Putting aside Song Shue's marriage for the time being, he did not care about the Song family situation. If necessary, he would just take Song Shue and leave. I wonder when a 9-nether snake will complete its evolution. Discovering that this little thing was still asleep, Qin Feng could not help but shake his head helplessly. The evolution of an archaic descendant took too long. Even now, it showed no signs of ending. Just as Qin Feng was about to rest, he heard a knock on his door. He was stunned. Who would come looking for him so late at night? Walking up to the door, Shi Feng opened it. A stooped old man with white hair and a white beard stood outside. The old man wore a kind smile on his face. "Do you mind if I come in?" The white-haired old man smiled. Qin Feng nodded and invited the old man in. After the old man took a seat, he asked, "Senior, you are Song Sanyan?" The old man chuckled. "Clan leader Song." Qin Feng was startled. He hurriedly stood up and bowed. Although he had never met this old man before, it was impossible for him not to know this name. This was the head of the Song family, Song Sanyan. "May I know why Senior has come looking for me so late at night?" Qin Feng asked. He became even more cautious in his heart. For such an important figure to come looking for him, he was afraid that there was something going on. Song Sanyan smiled and motioned Qin Feng not to be so reserved. He looked around the room and asked with a smile, "Little friend, are you used to living here?" "Very good." Qin Feng nodded. Song Sanyan smiled and said, "I really want to thank you for saving my children and grandchildren some time ago. This old man should have come to thank you in person, but I was busy with work and didn't have the time." "Chief Song, you're too polite. My life was saved by Xiao Shui. It's only right that I help them," Qin Feng replied. After chatting for a while, Song Sanyan suddenly asked, "Qin Feng, do you know who spread the news about you and Snowy? It might be an enemy of the Song family. Chief Song should be even more clear about this matter," Qin Feng said with a frown. He didn't know why Song Sanyan asked this. Hearing this, Song Sanyan slowly shook his head and said with a smile, "I also thought so before. It wasn't until last night when Xiao Su came to confess to me that I found out that the instigators of this matter were actually him, Xiao Yuan, and Xiao Lin." Qin Feng was shocked and looked at Song Sangyun in astonishment. The ones who pushed the Song family to the edge of the cliff were actually Song, Su, and the others? How could that be possible? I didn't believe it at first, but later I found out that besides wanting to ruin Xiao Shue's marriage, they also wanted to confirm your identity as the Song family's son-in-law. They wanted you to join the Flame City Guild as the Song family's external aide. Song Sanyan smiled. Qin Feng frowned. After a moment of silence, he said, "Forcing the Song family to this point in exchange for me to join the guild, this seems to be putting the cart before the horse." Qin Feng didn't understand. Even a fool wouldn't do such a thing. "My grandchildren think highly of you. They believe that if they can rope you in, it will be a great benefit to the Song family in the future. No matter how great the benefit is, it is still in the future. It can't be compared to the current crisis." Qin Feng said, "That's right. Your potential might be great, but at least for now, the Song family would rather lose you than end up like this. Speaking up to this point, Song Tsungyun bitterly smiled. However, it is too late to say anything now. With the Mo family stirring up trouble, the marriage between the Song and Yu families is almost impossible. The only way to remedy this situation is to hand you over to the Yu family. However, if you can help the Song family squeeze into the top 8, it is not impossible to become enemies with the Yu family, Song Tsungyun said faintly. Qin Feng's heart trembled, but there was no change in his expression as he said, "Is Chief Song threatening me?" Song Tsungyun smiled and shook his head. He didn't directly answer, but instead asked, from the standpoint of the Song family, as the chief of the family, the only thing I can do is to minimize the damage to the family. Don't you think so? Qin Feng's eyes slowly narrowed as he stared at Song Tsungyun, but he didn't say anything. Facing Qin Feng's gaze, Song Tsungyun smiled faintly and suddenly changed the topic. Third brother is my favorite son. His talent is the most outstanding among my children. I originally wanted to train him to be the next chief, but unfortunately, because of my wrong decision, he and his wife were framed and killed. Only little Shui and little Nian are left. The death of the husband and wife caused the bloodline to completely decline. I owe them a lot, but I am the chief of the family. No matter what I do, I must put the family's interests first. Therefore, I can only secretly help the siblings. The second son of the Yu family is indeed not someone little Shui can entrust her life to. But for the family, I can only give up. This time, the marriage alliance was destroyed, but I felt a little relieved. But when I thought of the family's current situation, I had to think deeper. To protect the family, the Song family must squeeze into the top 8, obtain the Tianji token, and enter the Tianji pavilion. Some things can't be given up just because you are unwilling. Hearing Song Tsungyun's words, Qin Feng was silent for a while. After a long while, he raised his head and looked at the other party, saying, "Since Patriarch Song is still hesitating, why not wait until you have made your decision before coming to find me?" Hearing this, Song Tsungyun was stunned. There was some surprise in his eyes. "You know what I am thinking? You are gambling. Gambling on whether I can help the Song family squeeze into the top 8. If I can, the crisis the Song family is facing will naturally be easily solved. But you are afraid that you can't bear the price of failure." Song Tsungyun's eyes showed some appreciation. He nodded, then shook his head and smiled. "It seems that I am really old. I am not as decisive as I was when I was young. Little Su dared to gamble and put all his hopes on you. What about you?" Chapter 443. Sacrificed? Have a good rest. With that, Song Tsungyun got up and left. After closing the door, Qin Feng fell into silence. Song Tsungyun's words might not seem like a request, but it was actually a wake-up call. For the clan, he could sacrifice anyone, and that naturally included Qin Feng. If Song Tsungyun did not dare to gamble and handed him over to the Yu family, he would naturally be able to clear his unclear relationship with Song Shui, and the marriage could continue. In other words, sacrificing him to protect the Song family. Qin Feng was not angry about this. This was the style of the head of the family. Under any circumstances, he had to ensure the interests of the family and minimize the risks. For this, he could sacrifice everything. After his sister was crippled, the lives of the siblings had undergone earth-shattering changes. Regarding this, as their father, Qin Zhen could not do much. If not for his rise, he and Qin Yao's current lives might not even be as good as Song Shui and her brothers. This was also why he did not want to be involved in the struggle between the great families. No matter what he did, once it involved benefits, he could only be the one to be abandoned. Even a close family member could be abandoned, let alone an outsider like him. Qin Feng's eyes drooped slightly as he thought of leaving. The sun was setting in the west, and the light of dusk shone on the backyard, adding a hint of twilight to the oppressive atmosphere. It was like a piece of rotten wood entering its later years, signifying the development of the Song family. On the lawn of the backyard, Qin Feng was lying down with a blade of grass in his mouth. Song Yuan was sitting beside him, and Song Shui had also been dragged over by her. "I heard that you rejected grandfather's request. Song Yuan asked in a very light tone. Qin Feng was silent. After a while, he slowly said, I'm just a rogue cultivator and do not want to get involved in the matters of your great families. You should know that I don't like to cause trouble. Song Yuan looked at Qin Feng and nodded gently before turning her gaze away and sighing faintly in her heart. Although she had not known Qin Feng for long, she knew that Qin Feng was not someone who was afraid of trouble. Even a half-step ninth-stage heavenly realm master who had provoked him had been killed by him. However, he did not like to meddle in other people's business. Back then, they had only vaguely revealed their intentions to rope him in, but he had directly rejected them. Therefore, it was almost impossible for him to help the Song clan fight now. After all, their relationship wasn't so good that Qin Feng would give up everything for her regardless of anything. Song Yuan raised her head slightly and looked at the red sun in the sky. She sighed softly and said, Do you know? Someone from the family has already secretly contacted the Yu family. Qin Feng's face was expressionless, but his heart was shaken. Could it be that the Song family had chosen to sacrifice him in the end? However, Grandfather has yet to express his stance on this matter. He has been suppressing some of the more radical factions in the family. If I'm not wrong, he wants to place his hopes on you because the first condition is that little Shue's marriage can be canceled. Saying so, Song Yuan helplessly shook her head. However, many people in the family may not agree. Plus, it's impossible for you to fight for the Song clan. I'm afraid Grandfather won't be able to escape for long. If we can form a marriage alliance with the Yu family, with their power and connections, the threat of the Mo family will naturally not exist. Our chances of entering the top 8 will also increase. Only in this way will the family not be divided by other forces. If Brother and I did not act on our own, perhaps things would not have become so tense, and the family would not have to be so humble, Song Yuan said in a low voice. Her tone was very calm, and even more so, there was a sense of helplessness in her acceptance of the cruel reality. Are you blaming me for protecting myself and not helping you? Qin Feng asked softly. I'm not blaming you. Song Yuan shook her head. After a moment of silence, she asked softly, Are you really not going to help us? When he heard Song Yuan's pleading words, Qin Feng shook the grass in his mouth violently, allowing the faint bitterness to spread from the tip of his tongue to fill his entire mouth. It's not that I don't want to help you, but you should know the current situation. The Song family is already the target of public criticism. All the major forces are eyeing us covetously. If I help you and fail, it's fine. However, if I help you obtain a spot to enter the Heavenly Secret Pavilion, the major forces will definitely not dare to covet the Song family. However, Qin Feng paused at this point. He spat out the grass in his mouth in frustration and said softly, At that time, the Song family's crisis will be resolved. However, what about me? They will vent their anger on me, and I will become the target of public criticism. I don't have the power behind you. I'm just an independent cultivator with no background. At that time, do you think I'll still be able to leave Great Yin City? Every family will encounter difficulties in their development. This is the trend of development, and it's unavoidable. I won't put myself in danger just because I'm related to the Song family. Can you guarantee that the Song family won't abandon you when it comes to benefits that are on a deeper level? You should know this better than anyone else. Song Yuan was stunned. It was not that she had not thought about the problems that Qin Feng mentioned, but she had not thought about it so deeply. Now that she heard Qin Feng's words, she finally understood. If he helped the Song family, the major forces that had failed in their plans would shift their anger to him. He was alone, unlike the Song family. When the time came, all the problems that the Song family faced would be transferred to him alone. The Song family's request for his help was, in fact, pushing their enemies to him. It was easy to imagine how desperate it would be for a single person to be hunted down and attacked by so many major forces. Moreover, if it really involved benefits that were on a deeper level, she could not refute Qin Feng's worries. I think I'm too naive. Song Yuan patted Song Shue's shoulder and stood up. She said to Qin Feng, If you've made up your mind, perhaps you should leave as soon as possible. When Qin Feng heard the worry and regret in Song Yuan's voice, he nodded slightly. It seemed like she also understood that he might be sacrificed. Song Yuan bowed. A delicate fragrance wafted into Qin Feng's nose. She had a deeply apologetic expression on her face as she said, "I'm sorry. I didn't expect things to turn out this way." Qin Feng did not say anything. Although Song Yuan had acted on her own and had her own plans, she had her reasons to help Song Shui. Moreover, there was no point in saying anything now. After Song Yuan left, Qin Feng was silent for a long time. He looked at Song Shui, who had her head lowered, and asked, "Little Shui, we don't want to, right?" "I don't want to." Song Shui shook her head and said softly, "However, no matter how unwilling I am, I'm still the young lady of the Song family. I can't ignore the lives of thousands of clansmen. Perhaps this is the tragedy of being a daughter of a major family." Chapter 444. Qin Feng's decision. Looking at Song Shui's calm face, Qin Feng sighed in his heart and softly said, "After this incident, you have matured quite a bit. But the price of maturity is too great. I would rather be a naive little girl who doesn't know anything and live my life innocently." Song Shui's face revealed a trace of melancholy, but her eyes were no longer as clear and lively as before. It was as if a layer of dust had covered them, causing Qin Feng to feel an indescribable pain in his heart. Everyone has to grow up. This is something that no one can stop, Qin Feng said in an indifferent tone. Song Shui suddenly turned her head to look at Qin Feng. Those beautiful big eyes revealed a luster that Qin Feng couldn't quite understand. "If possible, I would rather marry you than marry into the Yu family." Qin Feng was silent for a while and didn't say anything. How could he not know what Song Shui meant? The news that Song Su and Song Yuan had spread gave Song Shui some hope, but he didn't want this kind of marriage. Sister Song Yuan said that if we were to be together, you would be a part of the Song family and no one would dare to harm you in the future. Song Shui said softly. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows and looked at the blushing Song Shui. In the end, he shook his head and softly said, "I'm sorry. I still have many things to do. I can't stay here." "Fine, I won't force you." Song Shui's eyes were red, but she resisted the urge to cry. She turned her head and said, "There is still half a month before the Yin City Guild gathering. You should leave in these 2 days. Don't get into trouble." Song Shui knew that Qin Feng wasn't an ordinary person. He had too many things to bear. An eagle should soar to the 9 heavens and shouldn't stay in a corner. "Thank the heavens for meeting you in my last moments. I am very happy." Song Shui turned her head and smiled at Qin Feng. Her smile was innocent and lively, as if it was the first time they met. After Song Shui left, only Qin Feng was left lying on the grass alone. The red light shone on his body, forming a faint halo. His face, which was bathed in the halo, was gloomy. Qin Feng's eyes were like water as he chewed on the grass in his mouth. The faint bitterness was far from what he felt in his heart. It could be said that in order to protect himself, he had given up the last chance to save Song Shui. "Old devil, what do you think will happen to the Song clan?" Qin Feng asked in his mind. "There are 2 possibilities. First, you will be handed over to prove Song Shui's innocence, and the marriage will continue. Secondly, if you leave early, the Song family will be destroyed," said Demon Eye. "In other words, no matter what, Song Shui will not have a good ending?" Qin Feng shook his head. "You are not a member of the Song family. How can you help her?" Qin Feng was silent for a while, and then he sighed and said, "The 2 of them are very similar to me and my sister back then. It's just that with you, I changed my destiny. As for them, other than me, no one can help them." "Boy, what are you trying to do?" "I want to do what you did in the past." "Have you decided?" After a pause, Demon Eye continued, "You should know that this place is not like the primordial lands. There are many experts in Great Yin City alone. If something really happens, you will be in trouble. You don't have a deep relationship with them, and what you have done is enough to repay them for saving you. There is no need for you to take any more risks. If it weren't for you back then, my sister and I would have been killed by those scoundrels." Qin Feng laughed softly. He took a deep breath and said, "I have decided. I will represent the Song clan in Great Yin City's guild. Are you sure? Demon I asked. Yes. Qin Feng nodded. Since you have decided, go ahead and do it. You don't object? Qin Feng was astonished. The reason why he had always been unwilling to participate in the struggles of the various great powers was also because of the demonic eye. It had reminded him more than once that once he was involved in these disputes, it would be very difficult for him to extricate himself. Is there any point in me objecting? You see the past you and Qin Yao in this pair of siblings, so you want to give them and yourself peace of mind. Since you have decided, go ahead and do it. After a pause, Demon Eye smiled and said, even if there is danger, it is not impossible to protect you and leave, but it will be troublesome. Thank you. Qin Feng nodded inwardly. Lying on the lawn, Qin Feng looked at the clouds and the sky dyed red by the setting sun. A faint golden light mixed with a dark red glow shone down, covering the lawn with a faint halo. Young friend, a voice suddenly rang out, and a figure appeared in front of Qin Feng. Clan Leader Song. Qin Feng was surprised. Just as he was about to stand up and bow, Song Tsangyin waved his hand and smiled. There are only the two of us. Qin Feng need not be so polite. Song Tsangyin sat beside Qin Feng and looked at the setting sun. After a long time, he suddenly said, the sun has set, but it will rise again tomorrow. The light may be replaced by darkness, but it will not disappear. But if the Song family falls into darkness, we will never see the light again. Qin Feng shook his head and asked softly, what are the rules of Flame City's guild? Hearing this, Song Tsang-yun was stunned. He stared blankly at Qin Feng, unable to recover for a moment. Looking at Song Tsang-yun's appearance, Qin Feng helplessly said, if it weren't for Song Shui, I would have died long ago. This debt must be repaid. I can participate in Flame City's guild, but I'm not 100% confident that I can help you obtain a slot to enter the Divine Secret Pavilion. Hearing this, Song Tsang-yun finally revealed a somewhat comfortable smile. He smiled and said, if little friend Qin Feng can help us, our Song clan will have a much higher chance of entering the top 8 and obtaining the Tianji token. It seems that family head Song wants to take a gamble. Song Tsang-yun nodded and said, regardless of whether this matter succeeds or not, our Song family will owe you a favor. There's no need to owe me a favor. Qin Feng shook his head and said, if you want to thank me, you should wait until you successfully obtain the Divine Secret token. As for now, I have 2 matters that require your Song family's help. What is it? Little friend, feel free to speak. Qin Feng took out the spatial seal stone and projected the images of Tan Xian, the explosion, and Jing Wui to Song Tsang-yun. He said, they are my friends, but we got separated. I want the Song family to help me inquire about them. Because we were chased here by our enemies, I hope that the Song family will keep a low profile and not let outsiders know. Enemies? A trace of astonishment flashed across Song Tsang-yun's eyes, but he did not ask. He nodded and said, don't worry about this. As long as they're near the Great Yin Empire, the Song family will definitely find them. Thank you very much, family head Song. Qin Feng cupped his hands. This is what I should do. Little friend, can you tell me the second matter? Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he said softly, the Song family should have a combat skills hall, right? I'm a rogue cultivator and don't have any outstanding combat skills. I want to go in and choose one that suits me. It can also improve my battle strength. Song Tsang-yun was stunned. You don't have any special skills? Song Su and the others had clearly described your performance at the Scarlet Flame Mountain. Some of your skills even surprised Song Su. Yet, you say that you don't have any special skills? However, he did not delve into this matter. He understood Qin Feng's meaning. If he wanted help, he had to pay a price. Chapter 445. Dao Arts under Song Tsang-yun's lead. The 2 arrived at the Song family's battle skills hall. With the patriarch leading the way, Qin Feng easily entered the battle skills hall. The Song family was indeed one of the top 4 forces. Even though they were on the decline, their foundation was still rich enough to make others jealous. The shells were filled with dazzling battle skills and magic arts. There were all sorts of battle skills. Qin Feng did not stop at these places and walked deeper into the battle skills hall. He knew that the real good stuff was inside. Only after reaching the depths did Qin Feng finally experience the richness of this foundation. On a luxurious rack, there were a total of 10 scrolls. These scrolls were none other than heavenly art battle techniques that would cause others to be filled with envy. A single family had 10 heaven art battle skills. Such a collection could not be considered small. However, Qin Feng's gaze only lingered on the 10 scrolls for a moment before he no longer paid attention to them. Although the heaven art battle skills were good, they were not the purpose of his trip. He knew that in a big city like this, especially one of the top forces in the city, it was impossible for them to only have heaven art battle skills. According to Qin Feng's knowledge, battle skills were divided into low, mid, and high grades. After that, there were earth and heaven grades. It was said that there were even more powerful battle skills above heaven art. That was heaven grade battle skills. Qin Feng's gaze moved up and finally landed on the top row. There were only 2 scrolls, one red and one black. Qin Feng's eyes burned. He knew that these should be the 2 heaven grade battle skills of the Song family. Looking at Qin Feng's gaze, Song Cangyun's face twitched slightly. Heaven grade battle skills. Not to mention Song Su and the other outstanding disciples. Even some of the higher-ups did not have the qualifications to cultivate them. Of course, heaven grade battle skills could not be cultivated by ordinary minor heaven realm experts. Only those infinitely close to the 9th stage heaven realm could barely cultivate them. Moreover, the success rate was very small because heaven grade battle skills were only available to 9th stage heaven realm experts. Heaven grade battle skills. Qin Feng's eyes burned even more. However, just as he was about to speak, his heart moved inexplicably. His gaze seemed to be attracted by something as he looked at the row of high-grade battle skills under the 10 heaven art battle skills. On the outermost edge of the room was a shabby and extremely ordinary rolling table. Qin Feng unnoticeably licked his dry lips. His heart suddenly began to boil. That indescribable attraction was actually the power of water, fire, and wood within his body. To be able to resonate with 3 5-elements divine arts, this item was definitely not ordinary. It was very likely to be the earth divine art. Hidden pearls. Qin Feng thought of these 4 words. He knew that he might have struck gold with Meng Sha this time. He walked over and picked up the tattered scroll. The scroll looked ancient and plain, as if there was nothing special about it. Seeing Qin Feng's actions, Song Cangyun's expression became strange. Clan leader Lin, I want this high-level combat skill. Qin Feng waved the scroll in his hand. Song Cangyun looked at Qin Feng with a strange expression and asked, Are you sure you want this? You won't regret it? Why? Is there anything special about it? Qin Feng's heart jolted as he asked. Nothing special. Song Cangyun shook his head and said, It's just that this combat skill is incomplete. When Qin Feng heard this, he was greatly surprised. This is something I came across by chance in a cave when I was out. It does not have a clear grade, only the first half of the cultivation method. Song Cangyun glanced at Qin Feng. He paused for a moment before continuing. There is nothing special about this battle skill, but it is extremely difficult to cultivate. The elders and I have all tried to cultivate it, but to no avail. It is clearly the same as what is recorded in the combat skill, but it is impossible to cultivate. Oh, Qin Feng was slightly surprised and asked, What is the name of this combat skill? Devourer, Song Cangyun said softly. He looked at the scroll in Qin Feng's hand, hesitated for a moment, and said, This is only half of the introduction. There is no grade, and even the name is incomplete. We have all tried but failed. In my opinion, this combat skill should be quite good, but because it is incomplete, it should be impossible to cultivate. Are you sure you want this combat skill? Song Cangyun asked. Qin Feng hesitated slightly. If even a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master like Song Cangyun could not understand it, was it still the Earth God's secret art? Although the 5 elements technique was incomplete, it was not impossible to cultivate. Is it half of the Earth God's secret art? But what is a Tao art? Taking a deep breath, Qin Feng nodded seriously and decided to give it a try. Seeing this, Song Sanyun did not say anything more. The Tao art might be a high-level technique, but it was too difficult to cultivate. Even if it was here, it would be useless. No one could cultivate it. Since he wanted it, he would give it to him. Back in his room, Qin Feng opened the scroll. This combat skill was indeed incomplete, with only the first half. On the back of the scroll, there were two ancient words, Tao art. It really is not the Earth God's secret art. Qin Feng knew it was not the Earth God's secret art when he saw the chants and seals. But why does it resonate with the three elements divine arts? Qin Feng muttered, opened the scroll, and carefully studied it. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Feng, who was in the midst of cultivation, suddenly opened his eyes. In the center of his palm, the air violently fluctuated. A black dot floated above his palm. After that, countless black energy rays extended from it. The rays of light interweaved with each other, forming some kind of seal. However, the moment the seal was formed, it dissipated into thin air. What's going on? Qin Feng was surprised. He had clearly followed the instructions on the scroll and cultivated step by step. How could this happen? The cultivation of the Tao art did not seem difficult, but he could feel that the moment he succeeded, something seemed to be missing, causing the seal to dissipate before it was completed. He had followed the instructions to cultivate. So why did this happen? Unwilling to give up, Qin Feng started cultivating again. However, after trying a few times, the results were the same. Everything was going smoothly at the start, but at the instant of success, it would mysteriously dissipate. For such a situation, he had no idea what the reason was. Frowning, Qin Feng fell into contemplation. The difficulty of cultivating the Tao art also meant that it was not simple. However, if he could not cultivate it, then no matter how powerful the Tao art was, it was useless. What was going on? Qin Feng closed his eyes and carefully went through every step of his cultivation. However, he still didn't find any problems. There were no mistakes in every step of his cultivation of the Tao technique. Could it be that my spiritual power does not meet the requirements and I need to reach the 9th stage heaven realm? Qin Feng muttered to himself, frowning. This method can make the power of water, fire, and wood resonate, indicating that it is related to the 5 elements technique. The demon, I suddenly said. Qin Feng shook his head, but I have tried using the 3 elements technique, and there was no reaction. Then I don't know. You can only rely on yourself. After a pause, the demon, I suddenly said, since spiritual power is not enough, you can try spiritual power. In the past, there were also spiritual cultivation methods for spiritual power. Thinking of this, Qin Feng's eyes lit up, and he quickly used his spiritual power to cultivate the Tao art. However, he soon noticed the difficulty. Spiritual power could be easily cultivated, but there was no way to cultivate spiritual power at all. However, Qin Feng had a feeling that he had found the right method, but there was still something missing. Guide. Yes, it's guide, spiritual power guide, to assist spiritual power cultivation. Spiritual force cultivation mantra, and spiritual force also spread in Whis to assist the cultivation of spiritual force. With the assistance of spiritual force, there was indeed progress in the cultivation of spiritual force. It turns out that spiritual power and spiritual power are both needed to cultivate. Qin Feng finally understood. No wonder Song Songyun and the others could not cultivate before. It turned out that it was for this reason that spiritual power was needed. Qin Feng found the right method, but he also realized the difficulty of the Tao art. It was too difficult to cultivate. Chapter 446. His main opponent for the rest of the time, Qin Feng, spent it cultivating Tao techniques. And under this kind of cultivation method where he forgot to eat and sleep, his progress in the cultivation of the Tao was also not bad, and he had some small achievements. Time passed day by day, and before he knew it, half a month had gone by. As time passed, the day of the Flame City Guild's opening drew closer and closer. The atmosphere in Great Flame City was getting more and more tense and noisy. During this time, Qin Feng had also adjusted his condition to the peak. Initially, he wanted to use the few pills provided by the Song family to try to break through to the late stage of the Minor Heaven realm. However, he failed in the end. Tomorrow was the day of the Flame City Guild Tournament. On the last day, Qin Feng did not continue cultivating. Instead, he relaxed. Now that he had recovered to the peak of his condition, he needed to calm down and relax his body and mind on the last day. On the path of cultivation, the right way was to work and relax at the same time. Tomorrow is the day of the Flame City Guild Tournament. Brother Qin Feng, are you ready? Song Su walked over and asked with a smile. With big Brother Qin Feng around, we'll definitely be able to enter the top 8, Song Lin said softly. Song Su, Song Shui, Song Yuan, and Song Lin sat down around Qin Feng. Song Shui leaned against Qin Feng and lowered her head. Her cheeks were slightly red. Big Brother Qin Feng, thank you for your help this time. If we can enter the top 8, you'll be the Song family's benefactor. Hearing this, Qin Feng shook his head and lightly smiled. My life was saved by you. I'll have to repay this favor sooner or later. But you've also forced yourself into a desperate situation, Song Shui said. You've ruined their plan, so they won't let you go. There's no such thing as a desperate situation in this world. There's always a chance of survival in a place of death. Qin Feng shook his head. His expression did not change much. He said softly, It's not that I've never encountered a situation of certain death before, but I still managed to survive in the end. Those forces may indeed be able to force me into a desperate situation, but without such tempering, how can I grow? Hearing Qin Feng's words, the people from the Song clan were startled. They understood in their hearts that Qin Feng naturally had his reasons for being so powerful. Don't worry. If you help the Song family will not stand by and do nothing. Song Yuan glanced at Song Shui, whose cheeks were becoming increasingly red, and smiled. Grandfather has already decided that as long as you and my brother can help the Song family obtain a spot to enter the divination pavilion, he will betroth little Shui to you. With the identity of the Song family's son-in-law, even if you leave in the future, they won't dare to openly deal with you. Caw! Qin Feng almost couldn't catch his breath. This patriarch Song's way of doing things was too swift and decisive. The only reason he agreed to participate was because he wanted to help Song Shui. He didn't have any other intentions, although it would indeed help him avoid a lot of trouble. What? Could it be that our Xiao Shui is not worthy of you? Looking at Qin Feng's expression, Song Yuan joked, Our Xiao Shui is still the young miss of the Song family. No cough cough. No. Qin Feng smiled awkwardly. He tilted his head to look at Song Shui, only to discover that she had also raised her head to look at him. When their eyes met, Song Shui immediately lowered her head in embarrassment like an ostrich. Let's talk about this after we resolve this Song family's crisis. Qin Feng laughed embarrassedly. Hearing this, Song Yuan also smiled, but she did not pursue the matter. Right, what are the rules of Flame City's guild? Qin Feng asked. Every guild in Flame City can only send 5 people to participate in the competition. In each round, those who fail will be eliminated. The final 8 people will be the top 8 and will receive a secret token. You can bring 9 disciples from your clan into the secret pavilion at once. As long as one of our 5 people enters the top 8, it will be considered a success, Song Su said. Oh, Qin Feng nodded. Soon after, he continued to ask, Who from your Song family will be participating? How strong are they? Me, little Yuan Yu, and 2 others you haven't seen before, Song Yuan said. Little Yuan and I have both reached the half-step 9th stage heavenly realm, while the other 2 are at the late stage of the small heaven realm. The biggest threats to us are the Mo family and the Yu family. The former has been fighting with us openly and secretly for decades. The Mo family definitely won't let go of this opportunity. As for the latter, you should know. Song Su paused for a moment before continuing. The Mo family's Mo Sun and the Yu family's Yulei are currently in the same realm as me. If it's just these 2 families, it won't be a problem. The key is that I'm afraid the Lei family and the Wang family will also make a move against us. If it's fair, it won't be difficult for us to enter the top 8, but those two families will most likely make a move against us. Actually, this isn't what I'm most worried about. There's a situation worse than this. Qin Feng was stunned. Facing the encirclement of four forces, the situation was already very grim. Song Su nodded helplessly and said, "This is a chance to completely suppress the Song family. Once we show any signs of weakness in the arena, I'm afraid the Zhou family and the Supreme Mystery Sect will secretly make things difficult for us." So, not only do we have to deal with the alliance of the Mamo family and the Yoga family, but we also have to pay attention to the Yu family and the Wang family. In addition, we have to be wary of other forces. Qin Feng asked with a frown. The situation seemed to be a little more complicated than he had imagined. He originally thought that it was just a normal competition, but now it seemed that it was also filled with all kinds of dark and dirty transactions. Who do we need to be careful of? Qin Feng asked. Mo Sun, Zhou Mo, Zhou Xuanwu, Li Hen, there's no need to say more. Song Su said with a solemn expression, "I've fought with Yulei before. Although it was short and the victor wasn't decided, this person is very terrifying. If we really fight with our lives on the line, I'm not confident. As for the Wang family's Wang Kong, I haven't come into contact with him, but it's said that Li Hen is quite wary of him. I estimate that he shouldn't be weaker than Li Hen. If these two factions intend to make a move against us, I'm afraid that it will be very difficult for us to charge into the top 8. However, now that we have Brother Qin Feng, we will not be alone in the top-tier battle. We still have a very good chance." Song Su smiled. Qin Feng nodded slightly upon hearing this. These people were indeed very strong. Even he did not have absolute confidence in dealing with them. After all, there was a huge gap between the half-step 9th level heavenly stage. These people could not be compared to the middle-aged man he had killed earlier. To be able to reach this level at such a young age, one's talent was definitely excellent. If he fought with these people, it would likely be an intense battle. On the next day, when the warm sunlight poured down, the incomparably huge Yin city suddenly began to boil. All kinds of noise gathered together and soared into the clouds. Today was a very memorable day for Great Yin City, because the Yin City Guild gathering that was held once every 50 years would be held today. Creak. The tightly shut door was gently pulled open and Qin Feng slowly walked out, after which he saw Song Su and the rest, who were already waiting in the courtyard in front of him. Chapter 447. A dance at the center of Great Yin City. There was an extremely grand plaza. The Yin City Guild meeting would be held here. At this moment, the huge square was already filled with boiling human voices. There were many platforms that had been separated into the surroundings of the square, causing it to appear exceptionally spectacular. By the time Qin Feng and his group arrived, the surroundings of the public square were already filled with people. The start of the guild meeting is not the main event, but a sparring competition between various elite practitioners. In this kind of guild meeting, the various factions will also seek out elite practitioners and invite them to become guards or sinecures of their clans. Due to the sinecures being treated extremely well, many elite practitioners hope to be chosen by some large clans. After all, in a place like Great Yin City, it is naturally good to have some backing. Moreover, the clans will also provide them with the conditions they need for training. When Qin Feng and the rest arrived, they slowly walked towards the Song clan's seats. During this time, Song Su smiled and introduced the Yin City Guild meeting to Qin Feng in detail. "That is the Yu clan, Yulei." He pointed at an expressionless young man in brown robes as he said to Qin Feng. Qin Feng looked at the man. At this moment, the latter seemed to have sensed something as he tilted his head and met Qin Feng's gaze. Soon after, a smile surfaced on his face. Then he extended his hand and chopped down at Qin Feng from afar, his lips opening and closing, silently speaking. "Qin Feng, I will take your life on behalf of my brother." Qin Feng's eyes slightly narrowed. Song Su naturally knew what Yulei was saying from the shape of his mouth. Hence, he said to Qin Feng, Yulei is not targeting you purely because of the Song clan, but because of his younger brother, Yulan, who is standing behind him. Yulan likes little Shui, and such a thing happened between you and little Shui, ruining the marriage alliance. Naturally, he hates you. In addition, Yulei dotes on his younger brother and will definitely stand up for him. Qin Feng secretly nodded. Behind Yulei, there was indeed a young man who looked quite similar to him. At this moment, he was staring at Qin Feng with hatred. Brother Qin Feng, if you meet Yulei later, you must be careful. Although Flame City's guild competition is an exchange of pointers between the various powers in the city, and killing is prohibited, there is always the possibility of accidents. Be careful of Yulei, Song Su reminded. Qin Feng smiled and nodded. Yulei's strength might not be weak, but he was still not qualified to take Qin Feng's life. With this thought in mind, Qin Feng slowly withdrew his gaze from Yulei. He then sat down in the Song family's seat and waited for the Flame City Guild competition to begin. When Yulei, who was standing a short distance away, saw this, he smiled faintly and no longer tried to provoke Lindong. If they were to meet in the arena, it would be better for him to personally deal with Lindong. That's the Lei family. The one we need to pay attention to is Lei Jiuxiao. Because of the Yu family, he might attack us. There's also the Wang clan. Their leader is Wang Kong, whose strength has reached the half-step 9th level heavenly stage. The group wearing black robes is the Ghost sect. The strongest is Gue Yuan, whose strength has likely reached the half-step 9th level heavenly stage. However, the Zhou family has a grudge with him, so there should be no need for us to pay attention to him. In the following period of time, the members of the other two great families appeared one after another. Song Su patiently introduced these opponents to Qin Feng. After listening for a while, Qin Feng involuntarily frowned and asked, "Why are they all opponents? Does your Song family not have any good friends?" "Of course we do." Song Su chuckled. He pointed to one side and said, "Those are the people from the House of Bai. Do you see the man in blue at the very front? He's Bai Ao, the strongest member of the House of Bai's younger generation. He has some relations with me, and the Song and Bai families are also on good terms." On the other side is the Zhuang family. Their overall strength is second only to the four top factions. Zhuang Hu of the Zhuang family is a rather peculiar person. 5 years ago, he was at the bottom of the Zhuang family's younger generation. However, he had a fortuitous encounter and found an ancient treasury. Furthermore, he obtained an inheritance and broke away from mediocrity. In a short 5 years, he has become the strongest member of the Zhuang family's younger generation. Upon hearing this, Qin Feng also cast his gaze over. Bai Ao was dressed in blue and had an elegant demeanor. His temperament was also rather good, and he could be considered as the number one handsome man. As for Zhuang Hu, compared to Bai Ao, he was much more mediocre. His appearance was particularly thin, but his pair of eyes were bright and full of expression. His skin, which was exposed outside of his clothes, was extremely well-defined, like the edges and corners of a rock, exuding a sense of hardness. Qin Feng was obviously more interested in Zhuang Hu. This kind of mediocre person was never simple, and Qin Feng could also see at a glance that Zhuang Hu was probably more difficult to deal with than Bai Ao. The man in white over there is Ai Tianxing of the Yi family. Speaking of this, Song Su's tone became a little dignified. Upon hearing this, Qin Feng hurriedly cast his gaze over. He knew that although Great Yin City was dominated by the four top factions, there was another family that was more powerful, and that was the Yi family. It was rumored that the Yi family was a branch of the Orthodox royal family. It had once broken away from the royal family and formed its own branch outside. It was called the Yi family. Because of this, the Yi family never participated in the struggles of the various factions. However, there was no need to doubt its strength. Even the four top factions were no match for it. In particular, it was rumored that the Yi family had 2 seedlings who could enter the top 8 of the guild competition of Yin City this year. It should be known that even the major factions were not confident that they could have 2 seedlings who could enter the top 8 without the interference of the other families. This news was not groundless. Obviously, the Yi family had absolute confidence in themselves. The young man in white was also extremely handsome. The folding fan in his hand added a touch of elegance to his appearance. His face was as fair as a woman's, but his slender eyes were constantly shining. Obviously, he was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. Didn't the Yi family have two popular candidates? Qin Feng asked doubtfully. He had heard that the Yi family was not only the biggest winner of the competition, but also wanted a lock in the runner-up position. But from the looks of it, Yi Tianqing seemed to be the only outstanding one from the Yi family. Although the others were strong, they were obviously not at the level of Bai Ao and Zhuang Hu. The other person will not appear, Song Yuan interrupted. Yiwu of the Yi clan won't participate in the early elimination rounds. She only needs to appear at the end of the semifinals and fight with the last person to determine the final champion. Song Yuan's face was solemn as she said, Yiwu of the Yi clan won't participate in the early elimination rounds. She only needs to appear at the end of the semifinals and fight the last person to determine the final champion. Yi dance is recognized as the strongest among the younger generation. Even Yu Lei, Mo Sun, Li Hen, and the others are no match for her. This is also recognized by the older generation, so she does not need to participate in the previous rounds. Chapter 448. Drawing of lots. In other words, if we want to enter the top 8, we must at least enter the top 7. Qin Feng asked. That's right. With one less spot, the competition will be even more intense for any faction. Song Su nodded. How strong is Yiwu? Qin Feng continued to ask. Upon hearing this, Song Su and Song Yuan were both stunned. After a moment of silence, the former sighed and said, She is the only person among the younger generation in Great Yin City who has obtained the recognition of all the older generation experts. No one knows exactly how strong she is. All we know is that she was already a half step into the 9th level heavenly stage half a year ago. Some people even say that she has already stepped into the 9th level heavenly stage. Upon hearing this, Qin Feng was secretly shocked. This Yiwu was actually so abnormal. She did not even need to make a move, and she had already secured the champion's throne. As expected of the outside world, after observing for a while, Qin Feng slowly withdrew his gaze as admiration flashed across his eyes. In Great Yin City, without mentioning Yiwu, who had yet to show her face but was already deeply feared by everyone, just these people alone were already considered powerful. Even if they were placed into primitive lands, they would definitely be the cream of the crop amongst the younger generation. Moreover, this was only in the tiny Great Yin Empire's Great Yin City. The outside world was even more vast, and there were countless talented individuals. Time slowly ticked by amidst the heated atmosphere. However, the Yin City Association did not immediately begin. Instead, on the numerous platforms, there were several elite practitioners from various factions sparring. Many of them wanted to display their strength here in order to attract the top factions to recruit them. Even though they would lose some freedom in doing so, they would be able to obtain superior training conditions. Hence, it was considered a fair trade. With regards to this kind of sparring, Qin Feng did not have much interest. Hence, he directly closed his eyes and rested. This continued until the scorching sun hung high in the sky. Only then did the deafening noise gradually weaken. Soon after, he felt the bodies of Song Su and the rest beside him begin to tense up. Is it starting? Qin Feng's gently shut eyes opened at this moment. As he lifted his head, he saw an elderly man hovering in midair above the plaza. He was a member of the royal family and also the host of the Yin City Guild. The Flame City Guild is a guild that is held once every 50 years. I believe there is no need to elaborate on the rules. It's still the same. Draw lots to determine your opponent. Each guild will send out 5 people. The old man's vigorous voice reverberated in everyone's ears. Those who draw the same number will be their opponents. If your number is 0, you will have a bye in the first round. As the old man's voice faded, a light circle rose from his hand. Within the light circle, one could see dozens of rotating light tags. Chi. When the light rings appeared, the participants from the various clans immediately stood up. They stretched out their hands, and a suction force surged out. Each of them directly grabbed a light tag within the light rings, and then abruptly pulled it back. Swish! When a light tag drilled out of the light rings, a light ray extended out and connected to the people with the same number. When the light tag landed in Qin Feng's hand, the light ray gradually dimmed. As Qin Feng looked over, his expression suddenly turned strange. "I'm quite lucky, a practitioner from the Supreme Mystery Sect." Song Su smiled as he looked at the light tag in his hand, and then at the ugly expression on the Supreme Mystery Sect practitioner's face. "My luck is also quite good. I am confident that I will win." Song Yuan also happily smiled. "What about you guys?" As for the other two members of the Song family, one of them had a happy expression, while the other had a bitter expression. "My opponent is not as good as me. I am confident that I will enter the second round." The person with a happy expression happily said, "I am number 18. My opponent is Yulei." "Huh," the bitter-faced man helplessly said. When he heard this, Song Su smiled and comforted him. "It's fine, at least 3 of us will pass the first round." "Big brother Qin Feng, who is your opponent?" Song Shui somewhat excitedly asked. The others also looked at Qin Feng expectantly. If his opponent was weaker than him, then their Song family would have 4 people who could advance. "I am even luckier. I do not have any opponents." Qin Feng raised the light tag in his hand, shaking his head, not knowing if he was happy or disappointed. When the Song family members saw the large number of zeros on the light tag, their eyes widened. "We have no opponents in the first round." The few of them happily cried out. Everyone knows who their opponents are. "All right, I announce that the Yin City Guild tournament has officially begun. According to the old rules, starting with the newbies, you will proceed to the next round." As the elder's voice fell, the entire plaza instantly erupted into a hubbub of voices. Everyone's eyes surged with a fiery fighting spirit. The enormous plaza was divided into 4 stages. Therefore, there were only 4 matches in each round. Swish, swish. 8 figures quickly flew onto the stage. In the first round, no one from the Song family participated. Moreover, the few people he was wary of also did not participate, so Qin Feng did not pay much attention to them. The first round of matches quickly came to an end. Naturally, the results were both happy and sad. In the second round of matches, Song Yuan participated. Her opponent was a young man who was also at the half-step 9th stage, heavenly stage. However, his spiritual energy was weak, obviously having been forcefully raised by external forces. Therefore, he was very nervous when facing Song Yuan. Qin Feng glanced at him and lost interest. In a battle of the same stage, he had already lost the will to fight. The outcome had already been decided. However, what caught Qin Feng's attention was that on the other side of the stage, a top young expert finally stepped onto the stage. He was the Zhuang family that Qin Feng thought highly of, Zhuang Hu. His opponent's strength was not weak either. It was a powerhouse from the Mo family. I wonder if I can force out Zhuang Hu's true strength. Qin Feng watched the match with great interest, but unfortunately, in the 3rd minute of the match, the powerhouse from the Mo family was careless and was blasted off the stage by Zhuang Hu. Seeing this, Qin Feng shook his head in disappointment. Not to mention whether he could force out Zhuang Hu's true strength. He was afraid that he did not even reveal some of his trump cards. In the following matches, the Song family members stepped onto the stage one after another. Except for the person whose opponent was Yulei, everyone else advanced to the second round, which made the Song family's higher-ups quite satisfied. The first round of matches was over, and the number of participants was directly reduced by half. The remaining people would undoubtedly be stronger. The battles would also be more intense. In the second round of matches, the opponents were still determined by drawing lots. This time, Qin Feng's opponent was a powerhouse from the Yi family. In the previous round, all the other forces had people eliminated, but the Yi family had not. From this, it could be seen that the comprehensive strength of the Yi family was indeed stronger than that of the other forces. Qin Feng's luck was quite good. His opponent was the weakest of the five from the E family, who was only at the peak of the small heaven stage. Naturally, there were no surprises in this battle. In the 5th minute of the battle, Qin Feng seized the opportunity and blasted the E family powerhouse out of the stage. He was also the first person from the E family to be eliminated. Chapter 449. The Song family situation. The second round had ended and more than half of the participants had been eliminated. Only Song Su and Qin Feng were left in the final 16. Song Yuan had met Mo Sun in the second round and had been eliminated. At this point in the Flame City Guild meeting, some of the powers and experts had already become obvious. Out of the 16 people, the most feared was the E clan. Qin Feng was the only one who was not part of the E clan. The other 4 were all part of the 16. The Song family had 2. The other 10 were Zhou family Zhou Xuanwu and Zhou Mo Supreme Mystery Sex Li Hen, Yu families Yu Lei, Mo families Mo Sun, Luan, Lei families Lei Jiuxiao, House Abides by Ao, Sword Sex Lu Jian, and Wang families Wang Kong. Among the remaining powerhouses, the Yi family was undoubtedly the strongest. The 4 of them were all half-step 9th level heavenly realm. The strength that the Yi family had displayed this time had indeed shocked the other forces. Even the leaders of the major families and forces on the high platform were full of praise. This time, the Yi family will shine again. On the high platform, Mo family's patriarch laughed. Brother Mo must be joking. Mo Sun's talent is extraordinary. It won't be easy for Tian Xing to defeat him. Yi family's patriarch laughed. Although his words were polite and modest, the expression on his face was extremely gratified. Obviously, he had great confidence in his son, AI Tianxing. This year's juniors have good aptitudes. The Mo family, Lei family, and Wang family's juniors are not bad. They are all popular candidates to enter the top 8. Yu family's patriarch glanced at Song Tsangyun and smiled. This time, the ranking of the major forces will change. Song Tsangyun listened to Yu family's patriarch's words and snorted coldly, ignoring him. Brother Yu, you're wrong. Zhou family's patriarch shook his head and smiled. Song Su's talent is not bad. I heard that he fought with Mo Sun some time ago and did not lose. Obviously, he has many tricks up his sleeve. It won't be easy to take the Song family's top 8 seat from him. Song Su, this child is indeed not bad. But what makes me even more curious is that this son-in-law of Brother Song's family has a somewhat mysterious background. He seems to only be at the middle stage of the small heaven realm, but he defeated one of my clan's experts without revealing any trump cards, said the Yi tribe leader. He looked at Qin Feng, who was sitting with his eyes closed. There was some appreciation in his eyes. He didn't look down on someone from his clan who had been eliminated by Qin Feng. Listening to clan leader Yi's words, the leaders of the other forces also glanced at Qin Feng. Of course, they had all seen Qin Feng's performance. He was indeed capable. Not bad indeed, but it's just that your luck is better than others. After all, his foundation was too weak. Later on, it would no longer be a matter of luck. I'm afraid he won't make it past this round. Clan leader Yu laughed, his tone somewhat disdainful. Is that so? Song Tsangyun chuckled and said, don't rush to a conclusion. Otherwise, it won't look good if you end up being slapped in the face. Huh, then I'll wait. Clan leader Yu coldly snorted. Brother Yu, there's no need to be angry. We'll just wait, clan leader Mo said with a faint smile. The third round of the competition would determine the top 8. It was also an extremely important competition that the various forces and families attached great importance to. After all, only by entering the top 8 would one have a chance to compete for a spot in the top 7. Once one entered the top 7, that meant that one's clan or power would qualify to bring people into the secret pavilion. With this round, Flame City's competition had reached its climax. The next contestants were all true powerhouses of the younger generation. Who is your opponent? Song Su asked. A powerhouse from the Yi family, Qin Feng said calmly. We're up against the Yi family again. Song Su sighed, his expression extremely solemn. This time, my opponent is Mo Sun. They're doing this on purpose. Flame City has always had an unwritten rule. During the early stages of the competition, we try our best not to let the top powerhouses of the various clans meet, Song Lin said, her face flushed red with anger. The Song family members also wore ugly expressions. Song Su was the Song family's greatest hope. They could not allow any accidents to happen before the quarterfinals. Even if Song Su were lucky enough to defeat Mo Sun, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If that happened, Song Su wouldn't have the energy to compete for a spot in the top 8. Originally, I thought they would attack me during the best-of-3 matches, Song Su said with a grim expression. However, I never thought that they would be so ruthless this time. They didn't give the Song family any hope. Mo Sun is very strong. Even if I win, I'll suffer heavy injuries. I won't be able to participate in the quarterfinals at all. Brother Qin Feng, it seems that I can only reach the quarterfinals at best. I'll leave the rest to you. However, even if I lose, I'll heavily injure Mo Sun. He won't be able to fight in the following matches, Song Su said, smiling helplessly at Qin Feng. Qin Feng nodded slightly. The quarterfinals were very special. The top 8 contestants had to participate in 3 matches. Those who won 2 matches would obtain a spot in the top 7. This was also the fairest competition. Victory wasn't determined by a single match. Shifeng had also thought that these families would exhaust them during the quarterfinals. He hadn't expected that they would attack Song Su before the competition even began. As Song Su had said, regardless of whether he won or lost, he wouldn't be able to participate in the following matches. In other words, he would have to defeat at least 2 peak experts in a row in order to advance in the quarterfinals. This placed a lot of pressure on him because there wasn't much time to rest between matches. The other powers were also using this to exhaust the Song family. However, the expert from the Yi family isn't weak either. Looking at the expert from the Yi family, Song Su smiled bitterly. If I remember correctly, this person should be Yi Hua. He's best at using fire. His ability to control fire is superb. Besides Yi Wu and AI Tianxing, he's the most powerful person here. Brother Qin Feng, you have to be careful when you face him later. Qin Feng smiled helplessly and shook his head. Suddenly, his gaze paused as he looked in the direction of the Mo family. His eyes narrowed slightly. A young man in a gray shirt was sitting behind Mo Sun. He wasn't very eye-catching in the crowd, but Qin Feng sensed some abnormal fluctuations from him. The Mo family is very scheming. Qin Feng thought in his heart. Originally, he was a little surprised that Song Su and Mo Sun would meet so early. Weren't they afraid of accidents? After all, Song Su wasn't weak. Even if Mo Sun won, he would have to exhaust a lot of his strength. Mo Sun was the strongest expert among the younger generation of the Mo family. Logically speaking, the Mo family should try their best to avoid facing other peak experts before the quarterfinals. But now, it seemed that Mo Sun was just a cover. The real expert was most likely the gray-clothed youth. It seems that the Flame City Guild tournament this time will cause quite a stir. Qin Feng had a premonition that the Flame City Guild tournament this time would exceed many people's expectations. Some of the most conspicuous and popular contestants might be used as a means to confuse others. Chapter 450. Song Su lost. Song Su was the first to fight in the top 8, followed by Qin Feng in the second. Sitting below the stage, Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and looked up at Yi Hua, who was holding a light tag. Yi also looked up at him and smiled faintly. There was a strong fighting spirit in his smile. Is my opponent this round Yi Hua from the Yi family? I heard he's good at playing with fire. Qin Feng also smiled at his opponent. His smile was calm, without any fear. If Yi Hua still had this ability, perhaps this battle would be easier. Playing with fire. He had never been afraid of anyone before. He didn't believe that Yi Hua could also obtain a spirit fire seed fire. The answer was obviously no. In the field, Mo Sun looked at Song Su with a smile and said, I'm afraid it's hard to decide the winner between us. I suggest we both withdraw. Song Su was stunned. Then he sneered. If you're afraid, you can withdraw. Brother Song, you really like to joke. I just don't want to come to this step. Sun shook his head and smiled. He took out a pill and swallowed it. He sneered at Song Su and said, although this will weaken me, it can completely destroy your Song family's hope. I can only do this. As his voice fell, Sun's aura suddenly surged and reached the peak of the half-step ninth heaven realm. Heaven-breaking pill. Feeling the fierce pressure from Sun's body, Song Su's pupils shrank. The spectators were also shocked. The heaven-breaking pill could increase the battle power of a minor heaven realm master by about 30%. If Sun took this pill, Song Su would have no hope at all. Although the heaven-breaking pill was only a 5th-grade pill, it was rarely seen because the herbs used to refine it were extremely rare. They didn't expect the family to have such a pill. In this way, Song Su would definitely lose this battle. The third round of the competition was undoubtedly more intense than the previous 2 rounds. Those who could stay until the end were the most outstanding of the younger generation. The first wave of the third round had just begun, and it had already reached a state of incandescence. All the disciples of the major forces and clans wanted to pass this round because this round was too important. Generally speaking, as long as 2 disciples of a force or clan passed this round, their chances of entering the top 5 would greatly increase. Although the Flame City Guild had an unwritten rule that arranged for a battle between the strong and the weak, how many of those who could reach this stage did not have their own methods? Thus, even if there was a difference in strength between the 2 sides, the battle was still extremely intense and full of ups and downs. However, no matter how intense the process was, the final result should be according to the arrangements of the various great families. The first wave of participants, Ai, Tianxing, Li Hen, and Yulei, would definitely be the final victors. The only suspense in this round of competition was the battle between Sun and Song Su that attracted the attention of the leaders of the various forces. The 2 of them directly entered into the most intense battle from the very beginning, because Song Su knew that there was probably still a gap between him and Sun, who'd consumed the heaven-cleaving pill. If the battle continued for a long time, the outcome would be even more miserable. Rather than that, why not disrupt Sun's rhythm from the very beginning? In this battle, Song Su had given up on any thoughts of advancing to the next round. Instead, he used a method of exchanging blows with Sun. Even if he lost, he wanted to force Sun to the point where he could no longer fight or prevent Sun from fighting at his peak in the next round. The result was just as Song Su had expected. Sun had entered a state of incandescence right from the start, which indeed made him feel quite uncomfortable. Boom! The heaven-breaking pill's medicinal effects were fully unleashed, and the oppressive aura radiating from Sun's body caused Song Su's expression to turn extremely grim. Since it has come to this, the battle should end soon. Your Song family's Flame City Guild will most likely end here. Aren't you celebrating a little too early? Song Su glanced at Qin Feng below, whose expression did not change at all. Soon after, he coldly laughed. I'm afraid that you alone will not be able to stop my Song family's footsteps. Sun followed Song Su's gaze and looked at the calm expression of Qin Feng. He was slightly taken aback, but soon after, he smiled and said, Don't tell me that you still hope that the son-in-law of your Song family will be able to turn the tide? There are some things that should not be decided so quickly. Song Su coldly laughed. The outcome has already been decided. Don't tell me that you think that he will be lucky enough to survive the next 3 rounds? Or do you think that you can defeat me? Sun ridiculed. We will only know after we fight, Song Su coldly said. With a clench of his hand, a crescent moon like azure longsword appeared in a flash. Cold light flowed over the body of the sword. Clearly, it was not an ordinary longsword. Sun faintly smiled upon seeing this. His hand slowly gripped the huge blade on his back. With a spin of his palm, the huge blade flew out and heavily stabbed into the ground in front of him. Bang! When the huge blade stabbed into the ground, even the earth trembled for a moment. At the same time, a sharp blade glow that caused one's expression to change gradually spread out from his body. You will know the outcome in 10 moves. This time, I will not hold back at all. Mo Sun held the hilt of his blade as he raised his head and grinned at Song Su. His gaze instantly became as sharp as a blade. His body moved and rushed out like a thunderbolt. Bang, bang. As Mo Sun's body rushed out, an extremely shocking and sharp blade glow rushed towards the clouds. Wherever the blade glow passed, the hard arena was like tofu as it scattered in all directions. This caused quite a number of people's expressions to change when they saw this. In the viewing gallery, Qin Feng looked at the blade glow that permeated the arena as he pursed his lips slightly. Beside him, the expressions of Song Yuan and the rest were a little ugly. After Mo Sun consumed the sky-breaking pill, the situation in the arena was practically completely under his control. The sharp and overbearing blade Qi enveloped every corner of the arena. Under such attacks, Song Su was steadily being pushed back. From the looks of it, everyone knew that Song Su basically had no chance of victory against the current Mo Sun. Song Yuan stared at the arena as her eyes darkened slightly. Soon after, she softly said, "I'm afraid that brother will lose in less than 10 moves." Upon hearing these words, the eyes of Song Shui, Song Lin, and the rest dimmed. By the side, the elders and upper echelons of the Song clan also helplessly sighed. This outcome was already unchangeable. The atmosphere in the Song clan seating area was tense and stifling. All of the Song clan members tightly clenched their fists. Could it be that their Song clan was going to stop here? On the high platform, Song Tsungyun's large hands also trembled as they tightly clenched. If Song Su was defeated, the Song clan's hopes of advancing to the next round could only be placed on Qin Feng. Swoosh, swoosh. Overbearing blade, Qi shot out like lightning. Song Su's figure was like a small boat in a storm, on the verge of collapsing. Song Su has lost. The eyes of an elder of the Song clan suddenly narrowed as he muttered. Just as his words rang out, a smile rose on Mo Sun's face. His eyes instantly turned cold as he furiously slashed down with his blade. Sky Blade Slash. Berserk Blade aura whizzed out. Countless blade shadows actually transformed into a huge blade in mid-air, which directly chopped down at Song Su. Swish, swish, swish. Looking at the incoming blade, Song Su's expression turned extremely grave. The spiritual energy within his body practically gushed out as a 10-foot-long sword ray shot out and fiercely slashed at the blade. Bang! Chapter 451. Against Yi Huasai, he lost. The faces of the Song family members turned gloomy as they looked at Song Su, who was about to fall. Their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Song Su had an extremely high reputation amongst the younger generation of the Song family. If he lost, not only would it worsen the current situation, it would also be a huge blow to their confidence. Ugh! A mouthful of blood was spat out from Song Su's mouth as his body flew backwards. Shortly after, he landed outside the arena in a sorry state. His aura instantly withered. Clearly, he had suffered heavy injuries. I've said that you will lose within 10 moves. In the air, Mo Sun sheathed his blade as an arrogant smile appeared on his face. Why did you have to go all out? Otherwise, you wouldn't have ended up in such a sorry state. Qin Feng looked at the intertwining sword and blade aura as he helplessly sighed in his heart. Even if you did it, the Mo family still has someone who is even more difficult to deal with. As Qin Feng's voice rang out, the suppressed sword aura suddenly expanded and instantly shattered the blade aura. In the end, under Mo Sun's slightly changed gaze, the sword aura ruthlessly pierced through his right arm, causing blood to spurt out. Forcefully increasing your strength and hiding it within the sword aura to heavily injure me when I was careless. Song Su, this move of yours is pretty good, but it still won't change anything. Mo Sun gripped his arm as he sneered. The Mo family wins the first match. A cold voice rang out from the judges' seats. As the voice rang out, cheers immediately rang out from the Mo family's direction. Numerous complacent gazes looked towards the Song family's direction, causing the faces of many Song family members to turn ugly. Song Su's face was pale as he flew back to the Song family seats. He then looked towards Qin Feng and the rest as he bitterly smiled. Sorry, this is all I can do. Sai, forget it. You've already done your best. This is the will of the heavens. You can't be blamed. Could it be that our Song family's fate has really come to an end? Within the Song family's elder group, there was an elder who helplessly sighed. The eyes of the group of disciples dimmed as they looked dejected. Song Su's defeat was a huge blow to them. Why are all of you sighing? Don't we still have the son-in-law? The grand elder stared as he berated them. It's not like there's no one left in the Song family. Everyone, cheer up, the grand elder scolded. Then he looked at Qin Feng and said apologetically, Young master, please don't take offense. Grand elder, you're too kind. Qin Feng smiled and waved his hand. His tone was calm as he said, Others can only blame themselves for not being strong enough. Following Song Su's defeat, he naturally saw the expressions of the disciples. But he wasn't dissatisfied. In the Song family, there was no one in the younger generation who could compare to Song Su. They had ignored him, and even some of the elders didn't think much of him. This was normal. After all, they had never seen him in action and had only heard about it from rumors. Naturally, they had their doubts. It's your turn now. Be careful, Song Su whispered. Qin Feng nodded. He raised his head and looked at Yi Hua, who was already on the stage. He was also looking at him. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. Seeing this, Qin Feng didn't hesitate. He stomped his foot and flew onto the stage. Qin Feng, this time the Song family is counting on you, Song Yuan whispered in her heart as she clenched her fists tightly. Don't worry. Song Su patted Song Yuan on the shoulder. Looking at Qin Feng, he comforted in a low voice, You know this guy's strength. Yi Hua is strong, but Qin Feng may be able to defeat him. Song Yuan nodded slightly. She had never doubted Qin Feng's strength. But in the following battle, without Song Su to share some of the opponents, Qin Feng would face a more difficult situation. Yi Hua of the Yi family, please enlighten me. Yi Hua saluted Qin Feng with a faint smile on his not-so-handsome face. Qin Feng also smiled at him. Song family, Qin Feng. On the battle stage, the two figures faced each other from a distance. Both of them were releasing a strong fighting spirit. Wisps of light blue flames constantly surged out from Yi Hua's body. Like a flexible viper, they swam back and forth around his body, releasing a blazing heat. Whoosh! Yi Hua put his hands together and the blue flames surged. Then he suddenly opened his palms. A blue long sword completely condensed from blue flames flashed in his hand. On the long sword, wisps of flames were constantly jumping and rolling. Brother Qin Feng, please. Qin Feng exhaled and slowly grasped the sky-splitting axe on his back. With a whoosh, the stone axe cut through the air and pointed diagonally to the ground. A white spiritual energy slowly rose from his body and finally wrapped around Qin Feng's entire body. A vigorous aura spread out. Feeling the vigorous aura rising from Qin Feng's body, Yi Hua was startled. Immediately, a trace of laziness appeared on his face and gradually disappeared. The hand holding the blue flame sword exerted a little force. Suddenly, the flames on the long sword burst out. At this time, the two people in the field were completely isolated from the noise of the outside world. They were calm and focused as they looked at each other. The spiritual energy covering their bodies seemed to be breathing. The two of them maintained silence almost at the same time. A breeze blew through the square, and swords were drawn. As if aware of the imminent battle in the field, the people in the surrounding stands who were paying attention to the battle also quieted down a little. In the entire huge square, the other three battlefields were in full swing. On this side, however, it was unusually quiet, which was particularly abrupt. On the battle stage, the two auras that each lingered in half of the sky suddenly condensed. In an instant, everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. Two light shadows suddenly flashed, and then the sound of metal clashing and sparks exploded from the center of the field. The majority of the people in the stands could only see two blurry figures, one white and one green, as well as the sound of air being torn apart when the stone axes were brandished. Then, they could only see the stone slabs that were constantly cracking due to the collision of spiritual energies. However, even if they couldn't see the exact battle, from the two auras that were almost equally matched, almost no one could deny the intensity of the battle. In the field, Qin Feng swung the sky-splitting axe in his hand. With the help of the weight, every time he swung it, there would be an extremely oppressive sound of wind. Sometimes, when the sky-splitting axe was filled with spiritual energy, the sharp force would crush the ground and crack it before it even touched the ground. From this, it was enough to see how terrifying Qin Feng's power was when he swung it. In contrast to Qin Feng's aggressive attacks, the fire sword in Yihua's hand was like a tricky snake. It never came into contact with Qin Feng's heaven-splitting axe. Occasionally, it would come into contact with Qin Feng's heaven-splitting axe, but it would retreat as soon as it touched it, not giving the heaven-splitting axe the slightest chance to transmit its power. Figures flashed in the field, and spiritual energy fiercely collided. Streaks of spiritual energy occasionally spurted out from the palms of the two people and finally collided with each other. The energy ripples that spread out swept away the debris in the square. This guy has such a tight defense. Even with the speed of my sword, I can't even touch his body. The fire sword in his hand struck out like a bolt of lightning, and a series of afterimages with cyan spiritual energy appeared in front of him. However, no matter how fast Yihua's attack was, the axe would move horizontally in an instant. With the help of its extremely hard material, it easily blocked all of the afterimages. Chapter 452. Dueling Fire Few. Yihua let out a long breath and suddenly took a step back. His body leaned forward as the green spiritual energy on the surface of his body rushed into the fire sword. In the blink of an eye, the fire sword emitted a bright green light as a scorching heat spread out. Yihua's face flushed red as the long sword transformed. His arm suddenly jerked, and a clear thunderclap sounded from his joints. The fire sword in his hand thrust out, and the blazing temperature cut through the air, bringing with it a faint burnt smell. Noticing the change in the fire sword in his opponent's hand, Qin Feng's eyes turned cold. He clenched the sky-splitting axe with both hands and let out a low roar. The sky-splitting axe created a shadow and stood in front of him like a giant black wall. White spiritual energy danced on the axe like flames. Ding! The fire sword pierced the sky-splitting axe. With a crisp sword sound, the tip of the sword suddenly bent and softened like a snake. In the blink of an eye, it flashed out of the sky-splitting axe's range of defense. It fiercely slashed upwards, bringing with it a blazing cold light as it slashed towards Qin Feng's arm that was holding the axe. Qin Feng was also startled by his opponent's sword that suddenly became as soft as a snake. His hand quickly released the hilt of the sword, but his body did not retreat. Instead, he suddenly rushed forward. After his hand left the sky-splitting axe, Qin Feng's speed increased exponentially. His body turned into a black shadow as he passed by the startled Yihua like lightning. The moment they passed each other, Qin Feng's elbow suddenly smashed down and hit Yihua's wrist. Suddenly, the fire sword fell to the ground, and Yihua's arm became completely numb. Ding! The fire sword fell to the ground, turned into countless green flames, and dissipated. Yihua awkwardly rolled on the ground and avoided Qin Feng's fierce kick from behind. After his attack failed, Qin Feng slowly turned around and looked at Yihua, who had retreated a dozen steps with a shocked expression, with a faint smile on his face. The lightning-like exchange finally slowed down. When the crowd in the stands saw Yihua rolling a few times like a donkey, they could not help but be stunned. This was especially true for the Song clan disciples, who were all shouting excitedly. Masters from all sides were also paying attention to this battlefield, because among these people, Qin Feng was the only one who had not reached the half-step 9th stage heavenly realm. Only he had a certain advantage in terms of strength. What a fast speed, what a strong power. Ihua's mouth trembled, and then he shook his hand with a look of amazement. Qin Feng smiled. The son-in-law of the Song clan is indeed not simple. It will be difficult for him to defeat you with just this. Ihua sighed. His hands slowly came out of his robe, and he stared at Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled faintly. He knew that the other party was starting to get serious. The people of the Song clan should have told you about me. I'm not good at close combat, but playing with fire. A touch of pride flashed across Ihua's face. His hands shook, and a green flame deeper than before instantly seeped out and quickly wrapped around his hands. The blazing temperature made his face look slightly illusory. Looking at the dark green flame gushing out of Ihua's palms, Qin Feng's eyes flashed with surprise. This should be a kind of medicinal fire, and an extremely high-quality one at that. It was not something that ordinary herbs could condense. However, Ihua's words made Qin Feng feel a little funny. Playing with fire? Hey, in front of the fire god art, what kind of fire could he not control? Moreover, he had the ancient desolate spirit flames seed fire. Ordinary flames were child's play in front of him. The battle has just begun. Ihua laughed. With a strange smile, Qin Feng looked up at the proud Ihua opposite him and nodded slightly. Under countless gazes, his slender white hands slowly slid out of his black robe. Wisps of white flames seeped out of his spiritual energy and finally danced back and forth at his fingertips. I still want to play with you for a while, but if you want to end the battle so quickly, I can't help it. Looking at the white flames that danced like fairies, Qin Feng chuckled in his heart. His words, however, caused the entire place to fall into silence. Ihua, who originally had a complacent look on his face, was dumbfounded at this moment. Sorry, a civilized person like me doesn't like that kind of violent fighting. What I like is playing with fire. Two human figures stood opposite each other on the enormous square. Their palms were each shrouded by a deep green flame and a cream-white flame. As the flames churned, they carried a high temperature that caused the space around the two of them to become slightly distorted and illusory. The viewing gallery descended into silence as they looked at the two colored flames in their hands. It was a long while later before someone finally emitted an exclamation that was filled with disbelief and strong anticipation. What kind of flame is this guy condensing? Is he also good at playing with fire? This is going to be a good show. Ihua is a famous fire master. This white flame, why do I have a feeling of fear? On the stands around the square, voices of surprise and doubt continued to ring out. On the square, Ihua also slowly recovered from the shock brought about by Qin Feng's words. He looked deeply at the black-robed youth opposite him and said with a smile, I didn't expect to meet a peer today, but this is good. It's too boring to play with fire alone. Qin Feng shook his head slightly. If he didn't want to see his ability to control fire, he would have directly used the fire god's law to seize control of the other party's flame. But then, the game would be no fun. Although I don't know what kind of flame your white flame is, it should be of good quality. It even made my Xian Qing raging fire, which is a fusion of two kinds of medicinal flames, feel a little uneasy. Maybe it's a little better than my Xian Qing raging fire. He sighed softly. Immediately, the dark blue flame in his hand slowly fluttered. His eyes stared at the flame, and a moment later, a surge of fighting spirit seeped out from his body. Qin Feng, use your full strength. Let me see to what extent you've reached in playing with fire that you're skilled in. Fighting with fire is not about the strength of the flame, but the ability of the person controlling the flame. Ihua took a deep breath and suddenly raised his head. With a fierce roar, his eyes were full of fighting spirit. As a famous fire expert, he did not care about losing to others in terms of spiritual energy, but when it came to playing with fire, he had his own pride. As his voice fell, the dark blue flame in Ihua's palms suddenly burst out and finally turned into two perfectly round blue fire arcs. The fire arcs surrounded his body like two spiritual green snakes, moving up and down and protecting him. Seeing this, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. In terms of controlling ability, it was under the premise that the difference between the flames was not big. he was still deliberately suppressing the derivative ethereal fire. Otherwise, Qin Feng would like to know how much higher the ancient spiritual desolate flame was compared to his Xian Qing raging fire. You can't play with fire. Chapter 453. Heavenly Fire Lotus, a white flame, shot over and transformed into a white silver needle. Its speed was not very fast, but wherever it passed, the space became distorted and illusory. The air was vaporized invisibly. A faint white mark was imprinted in the void. At this moment, Ihua's face suddenly changed, and a look of shock finally appeared on his solemn face. Don't try to confuse me with your petty tricks. Ihua roared in his heart, and his face instantly became serious. He stared at the white silver needle, and a touch of fanaticism made his face flush slightly. Dazzling blue flame arc, Ihua shouted in his heart, and the blue light around his body surged again. The dazzling light caused many people to squint their eyes. Whoosh! Flames surged on the two arcs of blue flame, and as the flames danced, the air was distorted. It even directly ignited the void, and the sound of sonic booms was constantly heard. Swoosh! The white silver needle pierced through and shot on the blue flame arc. Countless blue and white flames splashed in all directions, and when the flames touched the ground, a black scorch appeared on the hard floor. The flames were like a boulder smashed into the calm water and sputtered in all directions. On the ground where the two of them stood, black marks were left, and many people were shocked. What a powerful flame, but it can't break through my defense, Ihua said with a smile as he looked at Qin Feng. The white silver needle was blocked, and Ihua breathed a sigh of relief. However, before he could finish his words, he was shocked to see Qin Feng's mouth curl into a strange arc, and his relaxed heart tensed up again. Qin Feng smiled at Ihua and immediately stopped suppressing the ancient spiritual desolate flame. The white silver needle vibrated violently, and its volume suddenly doubled. At the same time, Ihua's expression finally changed completely. What kind of flame is this? Ihua cried out in horror as he looked at the blue flame arc that was about to shatter. His dazzling azure raging flames were refined from the fusion of two types of high-quality and pure fire attribute medicinal herbs. Ordinary flames were no match for it at all, but in front of this white flame, it was so fragile. However, at this moment, he did not have the time to think so much because the dazzling blue arc of fire had already reached its limit and broke apart. The white silver needle, on the other hand, was filled with a terrifying temperature and sharp force qi as it shot towards his throat. Qin Feng's palm suddenly retracted, and the white silver needle stopped 1 centimeter from Ihua's throat. The white thread of flame that was difficult to see with the naked eye pulsed slowly, and Ihua's hair, which was blown by the wind, turned into nothingness as soon as it came near the white needle. The white silver needle finally stopped at Ihua's throat. If it went any further, the Yi family would lose an outstanding disciple. You've lost. Qin Feng, Ihua, and the silver needle, Ihua's throat, and the white needle, the needle, Ihua's Ihua, Ihua said. Immediately, in front of him, where the white flames had stopped, a green fire lotus appeared. Qin Feng, you're too arrogant. Do you think I don't have any tricks up my sleeve? You think you can defeat me with just this? You've underestimated me. Ihua waved his sleeve, and high-quality fire attribute medicinal herbs of different colors appeared, and then turned into colorful flames, which were quite dazzling. I, Ihua, have the title of the #1 fighting fire in Great Yin City. It's not as simple as you think. 9 flame arts. Ihua shouted softly, and his hands made a mysterious pattern in the void. The flames of different colors suddenly soared and gathered in front of him, and the void twisted violently. Vaguely, a terrible heat slowly spread out, making his figure somewhat illusory. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. He felt some pressure from Ihua's attack. 9 flame arts, heavenly fire lotus. The flames gradually subsided, and the scorching heat slowly decreased. In front of Ihua, a lotus the size of a millstone appeared, and there were 9 colors in total. A powerful wave of energy spread out. Heavenly Fire Lotus, this kid has such a high level of attainment in fire. Although he can only fuse 2 types of flames at the moment, he can use the other 7 types of demonic flames to create the Heavenly Fire Lotus. The Tianxian sect master smiled and said, "The E-clan is really talented. Iwu, AI Tianxing, and now Ihua. Brother Li, you're too polite. Compared to Li Han of the Taishan sect, Ihua is still some distance away." Clan leader Yi smiled, but anyone could hear the pride in his voice. The Song clan was still excited, but when they saw this scene, they suddenly quieted down. Obviously, they knew the power of this move. The Heavenly Fire Lotus requires at least 3 kinds of flames, and this guy can do it. Song Su's face darkened. Ihua, who used this move, made experts of their level have to be careful. It would be difficult for Qin Feng to win easily. However, if he used up too much energy, how could he continue in the next 3 fierce battles of the top 8 to the top 7? Everyone in the Song clan knew this, so their faces were ugly. Ignoring the reactions of the people around him, Qin Feng stared at the Heavenly Fire Lotus. At this moment, he could feel that it contained a very violent power. None of the flames were compatible with each other, and 9 of them were forcefully pressed together, causing the flames to collide with each other. And this confrontation made him vaguely feel that the fire god's law seemed to have lost its effect. It's not simple. Qin Feng sighed softly. This was the first time he had encountered someone who could make the fire god's law lose control of the flames. But since it's a contest of flames, it's a bit unfair to force it. He smiled, and there was no fear on his face. On the contrary, there was a surge of fighting spirit. It seemed that it had been a long time since he had a fair fight with a young expert. No matter how much experience he had, Qin Feng was still a young man in his 20s. People of this age had their own hot-blooded and unruly side. Ihua looked at the fire lotus in front of him, and there was a gratified look on his face. He could finally use this move. Go, Heavenly Fire Lotus. He gently pushed his palm, and the 9-colored lotus immediately shot toward Qin Feng. Qin Feng stretched out his hand, and the ancient spiritual desolate flame swept out, turning into a large white hand, and grabbed the Heavenly Fire Lotus. Suddenly, the lotus violently shook. Qin Feng felt the recoil of this power, and his body trembled slightly. He gently gritted his teeth, and the large white hand suddenly clenched, and white flames seeped into the lotus through the gaps between the petals. Under the impact of the ancient spiritual desolate flame, cracks began to appear on the Dharma lotus. Although the fusion of the 9 types of flames was able to cancel out the suppression of the ancient spiritual desolate flame and cause the fire god law to lose its effect, any of the 9 types of flames was too weak compared to the ancient spiritual desolate flame. Under the impact of the ancient spiritual desolate flame, the 9 types of flames contained in the lotus were broken down one by one. Iwa's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He quickly split the Dharma lotus into 9 different colored flames that circled around his body. Your flame is indeed very special. It can even counter the Heavenly Fire Lotus. I'm afraid that any of my flames will not be able to fight against you. Iwa stared at Qin Feng and then smiled. Although I can't compare to you in terms of quality, I can crush you in terms of quantity. Chapter 454. Conceding defeat. The roar of a beast was heard, leaving everyone speechless. To be able to control 9 kinds of flames at the same time, and to use them to such an extent, his ability to control fire was really amazing. Young Master Yi's means are really extraordinary. I'm afraid no one in the younger generation can control the flames to such an accurate extent. He is extremely talented in the way of fire and may go far in the future. It's only a matter of time before he surpasses us old guys. Some of the older generation nodded, their faces full of admiration. Qin Feng looked at this scene, shook his head, and whispered softly, "You want to compete with me in terms of numbers?" He slowly put his palms together and then formed the five-element spell seal, followed by the fire god technique. Actually, you shouldn't have shown off just now. Qin Feng smiled. What? Iwa stared at him, especially at Qin Feng's confident smile, which made him frown. He muttered, even if my flames can't block your attack, it will be difficult for you to defend against the attack of my 9 medicinal flames. Qin Feng shook his head and slowly spread out his hands. Everyone looked at this scene and was surprised. Did this guy admit defeat? Why do I feel that something is wrong? It's as if something beside me has been taken away. Me too. Something has indeed flown away. It's a strange feeling, as if something has been lost in the air. Everyone was surprised and did not know what was going on. Whoosh! In a short period of time, over 30 flames suddenly appeared. The temperature of the entire sky suddenly rose by quite a bit as a shocking heat wave swept out. How is this possible? Iwa's eyes were a little dull. There were more than 30 flames. How could Qin Feng control them? And what kind of flames were these? It wasn't medicinal flame, beast flame, or spiritual power. It was formed from any kind of energy. This kind of flame was shockingly pure. Although its attack power wasn't as good as his medicinal flame, this kind of flame had its own uniqueness. Moreover, there were so many of them that his 9 flames couldn't possibly contend against it. I don't think I will lose in terms of numbers. Qin Feng smiled faintly at him and continued, do you still want to compete? Qin Feng flicked his finger, and in front of everyone's horrified eyes, fist-sized flames rose up. More than 30, 40, 50. Everyone was dumbfounded. There were at least 100 flames in the sky. Iwa was even more horrified. As a fire expert, he naturally knew how difficult it was to control a flame better than anyone else. He had only been able to control Fire God Technique Studio. Qin Feng, to control more than 100 flames, was simply appalling. Was studio? Qin Feng smiled, said Hua. Following that, flames appeared in the sky one after another. Looking at the flames in the sky, Ihua felt a feeling that he had never felt before. That feeling made him feel powerless. Enough, I admit defeat. Ihua spread out his hands and said loudly. At the same time, the 9 flames around him slowly disappeared. Silence, a deathly silence. The entire square fell into a deathly silence. Even the other 3 battles came to a standstill as they stared blankly at this side. The whole square was so quiet that even the sound of breathing disappeared. Everyone stared at the scene with their mouths agape. Iwa had lost. He had admitted defeat in the most domineering and eye-catching way in the field of fire that he was best at. Gulp! The sound of saliva swallowing could be heard clearly. Then the square was in an uproar. The noisy square was filled with all kinds of emotional voices. They had thought that Ihua might lose to the son-in-law of the Song family, but they had never thought that it would be such a crushing defeat. No, it might not even be a crushing defeat. Ihua was so scared that he did not dare to fight and admitted defeat. After the Song clan disciples recovered from their shock, they let out earth-shaking cheers. One by one, their faces turned red as they shouted loudly. In despair, a new lease of life had been created and hope had been ignited. This kind of situation, where one had come back from the jaws of death, was the easiest way to stimulate one's emotions to the greatest extent. He finally won. Song Su, Song Yuan, Song Shui, and the higher-ups of the Song family all breathed a sigh of relief. Our son-in-law is really not simple. The grand elder smiled and sighed. The other elders also smiled and nodded. Obviously, they had recognized Qin Feng. This battle was won beautifully and brilliantly. At this point in the competition, no one had expected that the winner would be decided in such a way. This was a great boost to the morale of the disciples. The son-in-law is mighty. The son-in-law is domineering. Cheers filled with excitement and high spirits rang out. The Song family disciples were so excited that their faces were flushed. They raised their fists and shouted excitedly. At this moment, in the hearts of all the Song family disciples, Qin Feng's identity as the son-in-law had been recognized. In terms of prestige, he was not inferior to Song Su. After all, He had done what Song Su could not do. He had led the Song family into the top 8. In the face of the cheers, Song Shue's face was a little red. Her bright eyes looked at Qin Feng, and inexplicable feelings flowed in them that even she herself did not realize. The top experts of the younger generation from various places, such as Yi Qianxing, Zhou Xuanwu, Li Hen, and the rest, were staring at the young figure on the battle stage with a grave expression. Qin Feng had made it to the 3rd round mainly due to luck. However, after this battle, there was no longer the slightest bit of contempt in their eyes. He had scared Yi Hua, who was the best at playing with fire, into admitting defeat. This was enough to make them take him seriously. This guy, Li Hen of the Supreme Mysteries sect, Zhou Xuanwu of the Zhou family, Mo, son of the Mo family, and the others who had met Qin Feng face to face at Scarlet Flame Mountain all looked dignified. Although Qin Feng had killed a half-step 9th-level Heaven Realm cultivator without any effort, now that they had reached this point, ordinary masters of this level were no match for them. They originally thought that with the breakthrough in their strength, they would be able to suppress Qin Feng, but now it seemed that this guy was far from being as simple as he had seemed that day. The son-in-law of the Song family does have some means. The Zhou family leader smiled faintly. On the side of his face, there was a look of admiration in his eyes. Brother Zhou, you think too highly of him. Although Yi Hua's strength is not weak, he is only one of the top 5 in the Yi family. Clan leader Yu said indifferently. His tone was somewhat disdainful of clan leader Zhou's praise. Hearing this, the Zhou family leader shook his head with a smile and said, Yi Hua's strength is indeed not very strong, but his proficiency in playing with fire is something that even Zhou Xuanwu would have to use. Just playing with fire does not mean anything. The Mo family leader smiled faintly and said, in a real battle, no one will only play with fire. The son-in-law of the Song family did not rely on luck to enter the top 8. Moreover, his white flame is somewhat strangely tyrannical. Yi Hua admitting defeat is a wise move. The Yi family leader chuckled. The Yu family leader and the Mo family leader stopped talking, snorted, and said no more. Chapter 455. Top 8-inch haha, Brother Song, your Song family has picked up a good son-in-law this time. Patriarch Yi said with a smile, his tone full of praise. He was not dissatisfied with the defeat of his disciple. Brother Yi is too polite. Song Sanyan cupped his fists and smiled. His smile was somewhat gratified. Obviously, Qin Feng's performance had surprised him. Brother Song, to have such a son-in-law is a joyous occasion. Patriarch Zhuang also nodded in agreement. He glanced at Patriarch Yu and Patriarch Mo, whose expressions were not very good, and said with a smile, when did the Yin City Guild become so weak? How could their luck be so good that they could rush into the top 8? The two patriarchs snorted coldly and ignored him. However, the gazes they used to look at Qin Feng gradually turned cold. Their eyes were faint and surging with a cold luster. On the battle stage, Yi Hua stared blankly at Qin Feng, who was not far away, with a gentle smile on his face. It took him a long time to recover from the shocking shout. He did not expect that he would directly admit defeat. Admitting defeat because of fear was a bigger blow than any other kind of crushing defeat, especially for someone like him who had great ambitions. Thinking about it now, he felt that it was inconceivable. How could he directly admit defeat? It was as if he had fallen into a trance just now. If it was any other time, he would definitely not have done so. This was the deterrence of the fire domain. In front of the fire god's art, which could mobilize the fire elements of heaven and earth, anyone who played with fire could only submit. This was a kind of submission that came from the depths of one's soul. Most of the time, it was uncontrollable. Ewan not only knew how to play with fire, but he was also a fire expert. The deterrence of fire was not something that spiritual energy pressure could compare to. I lost. Ewan stared deeply at Qin Feng. After a moment, his expression finally became dispirited. He bitterly smiled and regretfully said, it's really hard to accept that I lost my confidence in the field I am best at. Now, he finally understood why Qin Feng said that he really shouldn't show off. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that my flames are of a higher level. Otherwise, it would be hard to say if I'm more experienced than you. Qin Feng smiled. He was neither pretentious nor pretentious. He was taken aback. He shook his head helplessly and said, "A loss is a loss. Ihua, I'm not a sore loser. I'm just curious. What kind of flame are you using? It's even more overbearing than my dazzling cyan raging flames, which are fused with 2 different medicinal flames. Also, how do you control so many flames? Where did these flames come from?" This was Ihua's doubt. Only those who played with fire could understand how difficult it was to control more than 100 kinds of flames. So far, he had only controlled 2 flames and could barely control 9. Compared to more than 100 people, it was not an exaggeration to say that this difference could be described as a natural chasm. Qin Feng smiled, but didn't say anything. Seeing this, Ihua understood and did not ask any more questions. He gave Qin Feng a fake punch and said, "I hope we will have a chance to fight again. Next time, I will never admit defeat." After that, Ihua no longer procrastinated and turned to return to the E-clan's seat. Seeing Ihua leave so quickly, Qin Feng smiled inwardly. The E-clan did not show any hostility or dissatisfaction towards him because he had defeated them twice. This tolerance was much better than the U-clan and the Mo clan. He began to have a good impression of the E-clan. Of course, it was also because the E-clan had an absolute overlord status and did not care about these rankings. Qin Feng turned and returned to the Song clan's seat. Next, he had to wait for more intense battles. The best of 3 battles in the top 8 would be even more tragic, because the people who won were the top existences of the younger generation of the various clans. Even experts like Zhou Xuanwu, Wang Kong, Lu Jian, and Bai Ao had been defeated in this round. It could be seen that this round was very valuable. The remaining people were all experts. The remaining top 8 were Ai Tianxing of the E clan, Mo Sun and Lu and of the Mo clan, Zhou Mo of the Zhou clan, Yulei of the Yu clan, Zhuanghu of the Zhuang clan, Li Hen of the Supreme Mystery sect, and Qin Feng of the Song clan. It was worth mentioning that the other 2 members of the E clan had been defeated due to internal strife. The winner was seriously injured and had to withdraw from the competition. In other words, all the disciples of the E clan had been defeated by Qin Feng. Before the Flame City Guild tournament ended, there was a rumor that the son-in-law of the Song clan was the nemesis of the E clan. "You've earned yourself quite a reputation now," Song Yuan teased from the side. Qin Feng smiled helplessly. Just as he was about to say something, his eyes suddenly focused on the light tags floating in the square. There were 8 light tags floating there. Next, it was time for the more intense battles in the top 8. Now that the top 8 had been decided, the next round was naturally the competition for the secret tokens. For the sake of absolute fairness, the winner of this round would not be decided by a single victory. Instead, a best-of-3 system would be implemented. Only by winning 2 matches would one enter the top 7. One could say that this round was the most important and crucial one for the entire Flame City Guild tournament. Every family and power placed great importance on this round. After all, whether they could obtain a slot to enter the secret pavilion would be reflected in this round. To reach this stage, every one of them was undoubtedly a true expert. Meanwhile, each of them would have to participate in at least 2 matches. It was rare to see a battle between top experts. Today, however, everyone would be able to watch as much as they wanted. Generally speaking, the smaller the number of slots available, the more intense the competition would be. However, sometimes, the more slots available, the more intense the competition would be. This was because out of 8 people, only one would be eliminated. Regardless of who it was, they would desperately persevere and wait for their opponent to be defeated. Under such circumstances, it was only natural that everyone's potential would be stimulated. The competition between the top 8 young experts had undoubtedly pushed the atmosphere of the Flame City Guild tournament to its peak. The entire plaza was filled with deafening shouts and roars as everyone cheered for the contestants they favored. 8 light sticks floated in the air before being sucked away by the final 8 contestants. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes as he stared at the light stick. When the light dissipated, two large words appeared. It's Yulei. When the Song family members learned of Qin Feng's opponent, their expressions darkened. At this point in the competition, it no longer mattered who their opponent was. After all, there were no weaklings. Of course, they were also looking forward to meeting Mo's son. After all, the latter had suffered some injuries from his fight with Song Su. Mo's son's opponent is actually AI Tianxing. This discovery stunned the Song family members. They had thought that Mo's son would fight against Liu, and Mo's son had taken the initiative to admit defeat, allowing Liu to win effortlessly. Then, he would face Qin Feng in the second match. It seems that someone is helping us. Some of the Song family's upper echelons nodded inwardly as they looked towards the Yi family's seating area. Liu and Yu Zhuanghu. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. Among the 8 contestants, aside from AI Tianxing and Zhou Mo, these two were the only ones he valued the most. One was someone who had transformed from an ordinary person. He was definitely not an ordinary person. The other was someone who would rather let Mo Sun lose to protect Luin. It was clear that the Mo family valued Liu and more than Mo Sun. Chapter 456. Black Thunder Flame / Be careful in this battle. Try not to consume too much energy, Song Su said as he looked at Song Su. Song Su looked at Qin Feng. Soon after, he shook his head and sighed. Yulei is also not a simple person. It seems that it is very difficult to win without paying a price. Qin Feng shrugged. The situation was already set in stone. There was no way he could change it. The only thing he could do was fight with all his might. Big brother Qin Feng, why don't you withdraw? Song Shui whispered as she tugged at Qin Feng's sleeve. Needless to say, she knew about Qin Feng's current predicament. 2 young experts were trying to snipe him. If he wasn't careful, he might even lose his life here. Relax. Your Song family's secret order is in my hands. It won't escape me. Qin Feng chuckled. He then leaped onto the stage. Qin Feng's insistence displeased some of the eliminated powers and those hostile to the Song family. There were even some people who felt that if it wasn't for Qin Feng, the Song clan would have been defeated long ago. And for a clan that was already destined to fail, there was still a slot that they could fight for. In their opinion, Qin Feng was the one who had snatched their slot, cutting off their chance to enter the secret pavilion's baptism. It's all because of that brat. If not for him, the Song family would have been eliminated long ago. We might have had a chance to enter the top 8 and fight for the secret order. Investigate that brat's background after this. Let him know that Flame City's guild isn't so easy to deal with. On the 4 stages, the participants were already in position. Among them, Qin Feng represented the Song family against the Yu family's Yulei, AI Tianxing against the Mo family's Mo Sun, Zhou Mo against the Supreme Mystery Sex Li Hen, Zhuanghu against Liu In, and Qin Feng against the Yu family's Yulei. There was no doubt that the fight between Qin Feng and Yulei was the most eye-catching. After all, it was Qin Feng who stole the bride that should have belonged to the Yu family. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes blaze with hatred. Stealing the bride in front of the Yu family, and from a prestigious family at that, this loss of face was probably worse than the loss of an enemy. Therefore, this battle was undoubtedly the most tragic. For the other battles, individuals might choose to leave their chances for the next battle based on their strength. However, the Yu family definitely wouldn't. Qin Feng had snatched away the Yu family's bride. This time, Yulei and Qin Feng were going to fight. Yulei was afraid that he would risk his life and would never allow himself to retreat. On the 4 battle stages, 8 figures faced each other from afar. The battle had yet to begin, but the crowd could already feel the oppressive aura emitted from each of the figures. Although most people could predict the outcome, those who could enter the top 8 were not weaklings. Even if those people wanted to win, they would not be able to avoid a bitter battle. Hee brat. In the end, you still fell into my hands. Yulei gave Qin Feng a sinister smile. His laughter was sinister and cold. Qin Feng glanced at him in boredom and was too lazy to pay attention to him. This time, I like to see how you're going to continue. The Song family is going to be finished, and you're going to die too. Yulei stared at Qin Feng and mocked. However, if you admit defeat, I can consider letting you go. So noisy. Qin Feng shook his head and said, don't embarrass yourself with these harsh words. Show me what you've got. Good, you've got guts. I like to see if your guts are harder than my axe. Yulei sneered. He just wanted to mock Qin Feng. Regardless of whether Qin Feng agreed or not, he would not let Qin Feng go. Clenching his fist, a giant axe appeared in his hand. The entire axe was pitch black, and just by looking at the faint black light it emitted, one could tell that the material of this axe was definitely not low. On the surface of the giant axe, there were several shining light patterns that eventually led to the grip. Obviously, this giant axe was quite strange, and his opponent's battle prowess should not be small. This axe is called the Black Thunderflame Axe. I originally wanted to use it to deal with Song Su, but since he was eliminated early, I'll let you have a taste of the power of my heaven battling axe. Yulei grinned and no longer said anything. Holding the Black Thunderflame Axe, he chopped at Qin Feng from a distance. A huge spirit power came slashing at him. Qin Feng looked indifferently at the spirit energy beam that was enough to make ordinary half-step 9th stage heavenly realm masters avoid it. His expression was calm as he slowly pulled out the heaven-splitting axe from his back and placed it horizontally in front of his chest. Asterisk dang. Asterisk a crisp and harsh sound rang out as Qin Feng took a few steps back to resist this force. He shook his numb arm and quickly circulated the spirit energy in his body, surging through his meridians, bringing with it a powerful force. Huh! Qin Feng shouted and rushed towards Yulei with the heaven-splitting axe in hand. Come on! Seeing that, Yulei yelled out loudly. He did not dodge at all. Holding the huge axe, he charged forward and fiercely collided with Qin Feng. As he moved, arcs of electricity shot out, making crackling sounds. Ding dang dang. The two figures quickly entangled with each other. Fierce spiritual energy constantly shot out from where the two of them were fighting, leaving marks on the hard ground. The collision of the Black Thunderflame Axe and the heaven-splitting axe caused sparks to fly, and the harsh sound was painful to the ears. Every time the two axes swung, the air was compressed, and the sound of sonic booms continued to ring out. Spirit energy raged around the two, causing the air to tremble. The two of them directly used the most brutal method of attack from the beginning, clashing head-on and fighting fiercely. Seeing this, many people felt their hair stand on end. The spirit energy fluctuations from the two were so violent that even ordinary half-step 9th stage heavenly realm masters did not dare to provoke them. Moreover, from the beginning of the battle, they were not optimistic about Qin Feng, but later, they did not dare to draw conclusions. This was because in this head-on confrontation, Qin Feng did not fall behind at all and was evenly matched with Yulei. Dang! After another head-on collision, the two figures separated, each retreating more than a dozen steps. Yulei stabilized his body and stared at Qin Feng, his face gradually becoming dignified. Only by experiencing this kind of battle personally could one understand the crisis in battle and the strength of each collision. In terms of strength, speed, combat experience, and grasp of timing, Qin Feng was not inferior to him. He really could not figure it out. He had also paid attention to the training of his physical body, and among those in the same realm, few could surpass him in this regard. Now, with the addition of a stronger spiritual power, it was still a draw. How did this guy cultivate his physical body? However, at this moment, Yulei did not have time to think so much. With a loud shout, the spirit energy around his body suddenly surged. Obviously, he did not intend to continue this battle and wanted to completely crush his opponent. His spirit energy madly poured into the Black Thunderflame Axe, and on the giant axe, 3 of the 5 lines of light lit up. These lines of light were black and slowly squirmed, releasing a tyrannical aura. It's the giant Black Thunderflame cut. Heavens, how long has it been since Yulei was forced to use this move? I heard that when Yulei used this move for the first time, He was not very proficient in it, yet he was able to cut off the arm of an opponent in the same realm. Now, looking at his posture, it is obvious that he has truly mastered the Black Thunderflame cut. It seems that the battle is almost over. The Song family's young master was able to force Yulei to this point, so he is not weak. Even Wong Kong was unable to do so. Chapter 457. The Mysterious Lu, and looks like Yulei wants to end this battle quickly. Song Su's face was solemn. He could sense the dangerous fluctuations coming from this slash. Even if he was at his peak, he would still have to go all out. But it won't be easy for him to defeat Qin Feng with this move. Song Yuan said, "Of course, big brother Qin Feng won't be defeated so easily." The few of them looked at each other and smiled. That was true. Qin Feng was not an ordinary person. From the start of the battle until now, he had yet to use any of his trump cards. If one were to estimate his fighting strength based on the strength on the surface, it was likely that many people would be disappointed. Black Lightning Flame Slash. A huge axe that was completely condensed from spiritual energy chopped down from the sky. On the huge axe, there seemed to be black lightning surging, causing this axe to have a shocking power that could split the heavens and earth apart. A strong, oppressive aura spread out. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and stared at the huge axe. The spiritual energy in his body quickly flowed. In the next moment, Qin Feng roared in his heart. He opened his palm, and white spiritual energy surged out. It turned into a huge white hand that reached out and grabbed the huge axe. Hand of Yang, hand of Yin. Qin Feng's palm shook. Immediately, black spiritual energy gushed out and turned into a huge black hand that continued to reach the huge axe. The two huge black and white hands fiercely collided with the huge axe. In an instant, the surrounding space was distorted. A silent and dull sound crashed into everyone's heart. Crack! A dull sound rang out. A crack suddenly appeared on the huge axe. Then, more and more cracks appeared. It was like porcelain that was full of cracks. Boom! In the next moment, the huge axe that carried a terrifying aura was shattered. It turned into spiritual energy light, spots, and dissipated. At the same time, the two huge hands were exhausted and also dissipated. Looking at this scene, many people were so shocked that their mouths were wide open. Yulei's terrifying attack was so easily broken. The gazes of the various experts gradually became serious as they looked at Qin Feng. To be able to remain calm under my Yulei's attack, even a fool would know that this guy was not easy to deal with. Previously, no matter how good Qin Feng's performance was, in retrospect, he had not encountered a real top master. His performance in the battle with Yi Hua was outstanding, but it was only in his ability to control fire. In the subconscious mind of many people, they all thought that Qin Feng was still not completely comparable to those top experts. However, Qin Feng was able to force Yulei to use his ultimate move and was still able to easily block it. This made many people realize that this son-in-law of the Song clan was not only strong in controlling fire, his true battle prowess was also quite shocking. Upon seeing this, Yulei's heart was slightly shaken. He was well aware of the strength of his attack. Even an expert of the same level would have to pay a hefty price to receive it. However, Qin Feng was only at the small heaven stage middle stage. Yulei slowly inhaled a breath of air. The contempt in his heart was completely withdrawn as an extremely solemn expression surfaced. At this moment, he finally realized that the young man in front of him was definitely in existence on the same level as him. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Yulei's expression became serious. He no longer held back the spirit energy in his body and fully displayed the strength of a half-step 9th level heaven stage. You are indeed very powerful. It seems that I have underestimated you before. Yulei's expression gradually calmed down as he put away any mockery and disdain. There was no sadness or joy in his heart as he calmed down. In a battle between experts, the most taboo was to be impatient. One must maintain absolute rationality and calmness. Yulei was able to have an extremely high reputation among the younger generation of Great Yin City. His strength and talent were definitely extremely high. Staring at Qin Feng, Yulei paused for a moment before saying softly, "If you can still take this attack, I, Yulei, will automatically admit defeat." As his voice fell, the spirit energy in his body suddenly became violent. Endless spirit energy madly gathered towards the giant axe as the spirit energy in his body also poured into the giant axe without any reservation. Under the endless spirit energy gathering, the black thunder fire axe began to tremble slightly. Black light flickered and electric arc surged. Light patterns flickered. 1, 2, 4. A total of 4 light patterns flickered, one more than before. An extremely powerful aura spread out. Still not enough. Yulei's face flushed red, and even his eyes became blood red. He stared at the last light pattern on the giant axe, where there were specks of fluorescent light flickering. Open 5. A loud roar came out from his mouth as spirit energy madly gathered towards the giant axe. The trembling of the giant axe became even more intense. On the 5th light pattern, more and more fluorescent light gathered. In the end, the light spots filled every corner of the light pattern, and the 5th light pattern was activated. This is my strongest attack. I originally wanted to use it when I was fighting for the crown. Haha, I didn't expect that I would be forced to this step by you. Yulei's body trembled, and his face was extremely pale. Obviously, this attack consumed a lot of his spirit energy. If you can still take it, then I'll admit defeat. The trembling giant axe shone brightly and became more and more intense. However, at this moment, a loud roar suddenly came from the high platform. Everyone's gaze suddenly shifted. Zhuang Hu admit defeat immediately. Everyone's gaze shifted. Even Qin Feng and Yulei were stunned as they looked at Zhuang Hu's battle. On the other battle stage, Zhuang Hu's face was ugly as he stared at the expressionless Lu and opposite him. His eyes flickered crazily with unwillingness. Opposite him, Luin stood in the air. He stretched out his palms, and between his hands, a half-foot-long black thread slowly wriggled like a tiny black earthworm. A terrifying, cutting intent spread out. It actually made the space around him feel as if it was being cut open. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng's eyes slightly narrowed. He had sensed that Luin was not simple from the beginning, but he did not expect that Zhuang Hu would fall into a situation where he was bound to lose so quickly. Luin's terror was evident. I admit defeat. Zhuang Hu's face kept changing. In the end, he roared unwillingly and jumped off the battle stage. He looked sullen as he returned to the Zhuang family's seats. His opponent's power was too strange and terrifying. He did not have the slightest confidence that he could take it. Rather than being seriously injured and losing, it was better to preserve his strength. As long as he won the next 2 rounds, he could still advance to the next round. Clan leader Zhuang's face was extremely ugly. He looked at clan leader Mo and said in a low voice, "Brother Mo's plan is really vicious." Clan leader Mo smiled and said, "Brother Zhuang, why do you have to be like this? With Zhuang Hu's strength, he can't run away from the top 7. Although clan leader Mo's tone was calm, it contained a hint of mockery. Clan leader Zhuang was so angry that his knuckles cracked. On the high platform, the leaders of the other clans looked solemn. Luin's strength was beyond their expectations. They originally thought that he was about the same as the other top experts because he did not perform well in the previous rounds. Chapter 458. Desperate at this point, everyone understood that Luin was the Mo family's final trump card. Although he looked ordinary, he was actually the most terrifying dark horse. AI, Tianxing, Zhou Mo, and the rest stared at Luin with grave expressions, especially the black line between his hands. Even they felt a wave of apprehension from the sharp cutting intent. Tianxing and Zhou Mo both thought to themselves at the same time, "This guy is really good at concealing himself." After Zhuang Hu admitted defeat, Luin smiled and the black line dissipated. He then calmly returned to the Mo family's seating area without any expression on his face. What a terrifying opponent. Qin Feng slowly retracted his gaze and looked at Yulei. The latter also regained his senses and gave Qin Feng a sinister smile. At the same time, the light on the giant axe reached its peak, and the dazzling light covered the sun in the sky. Heavenly Tao lightning flame. Above the giant axe, the light gathered at the tip of the axe. At that moment of convergence, the light was extremely dazzling. In the next moment, a ray of light that seemed to be burning with black lightning shot out. The air along the way was forcibly compressed and exploded. It left a shallow crack in the void. Everyone's gaze shifted again and stared at the battlefield. Everyone knew that after this attack, the outcome of this battle would be decided. Qin Feng's palms were covered with black and white spiritual energies. His hands quickly formed a strange seal, and the black and white spiritual energies fused together to form a strange circular pattern. It was similar to the shape of Tai Chi, as if yin and yang were embracing each other. However, it was extremely rough. Even so, there was a different kind of terrifying power that pervaded the air. The small pattern now had the aura of a mountain. Qin Feng raised his head. The pressure brought by the sharp ray of light almost caused his body to tilt slightly. Qin Feng shifted his feet slightly and tried his best to divert the huge force to the ground. He looked at the circular pattern in his hands and whispered softly, "This is the first time I've tried it. I don't know if it's right or not. Since you're derived from yin and yang, I'll call you the yin-yang seal for the time being." After taking a deep breath and remaining silent for a moment, Qin Feng suddenly bent his finger and flicked the yin-yang seal. He whispered softly, "Go, yin-yang seal." As his voice fell, the yin-yang seal suddenly left his hand and turned into a ray of black and white light. Like a meteor, it flew towards the blazing ray of light with lightning speed. Under countless nervous gazes in the square, the two rays of light flashed in the air. Finally, they collided fiercely in the middle of the stage like meteors colliding. Boom! At this moment, a loud roar resounded throughout the entire huge square. A loud, thunder-like sound suddenly resounded in the sky above the huge square. It was like the fury of the thunder god, causing people's hearts to involuntarily tremble in fear. After the loud sound, the energy collision was like a volcanic eruption. The two incomparably ferocious energies came into contact in mid-air, and each of them frantically released the terrifying energy contained in each of them. Immediately, an energy storm appeared in the sky above the square and whizzed past. At the point where the two collided, even the illusionary air became blurry and distorted due to the powerful energy collision. The storm whizzed past and then spread out. It was like a heavenly fire had descended, and it swept towards the square and the two people on the stage. Countless energy shock waves attacked, and the first to bear the brunt of it were naturally Qin Feng and Yulei. The number of energy shock waves was too dense, and even Qin Feng was in a difficult situation as he dodged them. He stared at the place where the energy shock waves were the densest, and his heart trembled. He did not expect the energy of the yin-yang seal to be so great, especially when it was combined with Yulei's attack. The energy shock waves were even more powerful. Qin Feng put away the sky-splitting axe, and his speed suddenly increased. He dodged the dense energy shock waves like a snake. Chi-Chi, on the stage, which was blocked by the strong light, Yulei's body was like a withered leaf in the wind. He used all his strength to jump back and forth, and he flashed back and forth in the air to dodge the energy shock waves that were whizzing towards him. However, the attack range and quantity of the energy shock waves were too great. Moreover, he had used up too much energy previously. After dodging more than a dozen energy shock waves, he was finally exhausted. His body slowed down, and an energy shock wave heavily hit his body. Suddenly, his face turned pale, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Covering his chest with his palm, Yulei endured the pain in his body. His spiritual energy erupted, and he flew up into the air to avoid the dense energy shock waves. Just as he flew into the air and was about to move, his pupils abruptly shrank. He abruptly turned his head and saw that not far behind him, Qin Feng had his arms crossed over his chest. His pitch-black pupils were coldly looking at him. "Do you want to withdraw yourself? Or do you want me to kick you out?" Qin Feng said indifferently. "You." Yulei was stunned. Just as he was about to scold him, he saw Qin Feng in the distance squint his eyes. In an instant, he revealed a biting, cold, murderous intent, which made him feel cold all over. However, he soon regained his senses. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian wanted to snatch the bride, he might have considered the situation and chose to withdraw. But now it was absolutely impossible for him to do so. For aristocratic clans like them, what they cared about the most was their face. I didn't expect that even the heavenly thunder flame light was blocked by him. Yulei's eyes flickered, and the expression on his face was uncertain. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feng, who had an indifferent expression, and said, "You are indeed very strong. I admit that." Before Yulei could finish his words, Qin Feng suddenly swooped down on him. The sky-splitting axe flashed in his hand, and then, with a large shadow, it smashed down on Yulei. "You!" Seeing this, Yulei was furious. He shouted and raised the black thunder flame axe to meet the sky-splitting axe. Clang! A sharp, ear-piercing sound of metal rang out, and the huge force of the sky-splitting axe suddenly poured down. Yulei, who was in the air, couldn't borrow any force. Under the impact of this force, his body trembled, and then, under the gaze of countless people, he fell down fiercely. In the direction he fell was the place where the energy shock waves were the most concentrated. There was no doubt that if Yulei fell there, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. However, at this moment, his body shone with light. His rapidly falling body drew a concave arc 10 meters from the ground and flew up into the sky again. Whoosh! However, before he could stabilize his body, Qin Feng flashed and appeared beside Yulei like a ghost. His left hand was filled with the roar of a dragon, and his right hand was filled with the roar of a tiger. Both of his fists were thrown out, and the dragon and tiger surged out, spiraling toward Yulei. Chapter 459. Two dark horses rumble. An extremely dull explosion suddenly rang out like a thunderclap. The air was like boiling water as terrifying ripples frantically spread out. Wherever they passed, even the air was obliterated. There was no life left in it. This Yulei is crazy. He actually wants to die together with his opponent. Countless people were horrified. They didn't expect Yulei to be so crazy. With such a terrifying shockwave, no one under the 9th stage heaven realm could survive. Of course, that included Yulei. No one would have thought that the battle between Qin Feng and Yulei would be so desperate. Even more so, they didn't think that Yulei would be so crazy. He would rather self-detonate to drag Qin Feng down with him. It seems that both of them are going to be eliminated. Someone said and shook his head. In the first round of 2 out of 3, there was no need to fight so hard. Wouldn't it be a waste to help others? There is no doubt that even if the two of them managed to survive such a terrifying explosion, they would be seriously injured and wouldn't be able to enter the second round. Xiao, a figure shot out from the place where the energy explosion was the most terrifying. His body was surrounded by flames as he shot down like a cannonball. With a loud bang, he heavily smashed into the ground, causing cracks to appear on the hard platform. Everyone immediately looked over, wanting to see who had lost. "It's Yulei. What's going on? His injuries?" Everyone's expression changed slightly. Although Yulei looked miserable, judging from his aura, he didn't seem to have suffered too much damage. What was going on? Under such a powerful shockwave, Yulei didn't suffer too much damage. It was unbelievable. It's his armor. It should be an armor with amazing defensive power. Soon, someone with sharp eyesight said. Only then did everyone understand that such a big family naturally didn't lack defensive artifacts. No wonder Yulei dared to fight so hard. He could afford it. This Song family's son-in-law is probably out of luck this time. In the sky, where everyone's gaze was focused, the distorted space gradually recovered. The energy also slowly dissipated, and the scene inside was once again exposed to everyone's eyes. Soon after, everyone's pupils shrank fiercely. Qin Feng, who was in midair, was actually not injured at all. Even his clothes showed no signs of damage. What was going on? It was even more shocking. Yulei had a defensive-type magical equipment, and its level was not low, so he was able to survive that kind of explosion. However, how could Qin Feng be completely fine? This did not make any sense. There are no fluctuations of magical treasures on his body, someone said with surprise. Yulei's expression also froze as he looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. Although he had a special armor to protect his body, it still consumed 80 to 90% of his spiritual energy. Even so, he still couldn't hurt Qin Feng, which made him feel a little frustrated. This freak, Yulei clenched his fists tightly. His body was trembling slightly due to overexertion. Pucci! Suddenly, Qin Feng's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The light wings on his back flickered and disappeared, and his body fell rapidly. Seeing this, Yulei's face was filled with joy. It turned out that it was not that he didn't hurt Qin Feng at all. It was just that he was very strong. Qin Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at Yulei expressionlessly. In the big explosion just now, although he used the primitive war body to protect his body in time, because the time was too short and the distance was too close, he still suffered a lot of impact. He walked step by step toward Yulei. Spiritual energy spread out from his body. Although he suffered a lot of injuries, his consumption was much less than Yulei's. Yulei, admit defeat. At this moment, someone from the Yu family side said, asking Yulei to admit defeat. Yulei's eyes flashed with unwillingness, but he was not a hesitant person. He was far from being Qin Feng's opponent now, so preserving his strength was the best plan. I never thought that it would really come to this point. Yulei sighed deeply. They had previously agreed that if he was unable to defeat Qin Feng, he would do his best to injure him. Then, in the second round, he would leave it to the Mo family's Luan to deal with. Although this was a loss of face, it was nothing to a dead man. Qin Feng had suffered heavy injuries. Unless he withdrew from the competition, he would definitely die at the hands of Lu, and I'll let you live a little longer. Yulei sneered. He turned around and walked down the stage, returning to the Yu family's seats. Yulei's admission of defeat caused everyone to sigh. They were even more afraid of Qin Feng now. The other three people admitted defeat, not because of the difference in strength, but because they didn't have absolute confidence and didn't want to fight to the death. However, he was the only one who forced Yulei to admit defeat. This was fundamentally different. Flame City's guild really is full of surprises this time. AI Tianxing's expression was unprecedentedly grim. One was the mysterious Lu En, who had defeated Zhuang Hu, and the other was the Song family's son-in-law, who had defeated Yulei. Neither of them was easy to deal with. It seems that if our Yi family wants to secure the championship this time, we might need her to take action, AI Tianxing inwardly thought. Originally, he had been the most popular contestant in Heavenly Flame City's competition. However, with the appearance of the mysterious Lu En and the Song family's son-in-law, AI Tianxing no longer had absolute confidence in winning. The champion was the one who defeated all his opponents and stood at the highest position. Both the mysterious Lu and Qin Feng required him to do his best to deal with them. Under such a tag-team battle, even AI Tianxing wasn't confident that he could reach the end and stand at the top. Of course, this competition would only take place after the top 7 contestants had obtained the slots to enter the secret pavilion. In the first match, the 8 contestants had some wins and some losses. Aside from Qin Feng and Yulei, their battles weren't too intense. Mo Sun took the initiative to admit defeat, giving himself enough time to recover. As for Li Hen and Zhou Mo, they didn't engage in an overly intense battle. They quickly admitted defeat, conserving their energy for the second match. In the first match, Qin Feng, AI, Tianxing, Zhou Mo, and Lu and had each won a match. Aside from Qin Feng, the other three hadn't expended much of their energy. The next match would be much easier for them. However, Qin Feng was different. He had expended the most energy. Moreover, he had sustained significant injuries. The second match would be much more difficult for him. Most importantly, if someone wanted to stop the Song family, they would definitely arrange an extremely difficult opponent for him in this round. Sure enough, in the second match, Qin Feng's opponent was the Mo family's Lu and two dark horses. This match is going to be interesting. When the crowd heard about this match, they were all stunned. However, they quickly regained their senses. They knew that someone wanted to stop the Song family's advancement. The battle between the two dark horses. Interesting. However, the Song family's son-in-law had expended a lot of energy in the previous match. On the other hand, Luan won rather easily. This is somewhat unfair. Huh? What's unfair about it? Luan is stronger than Yulei. That's because he's capable. Qin Feng was injured by Yulei. That's because he isn't strong enough. Chapter 460. The Battle of the Dark Horses. After the first round ended, the second round began very quickly. Apart from Luan, who was the first to finish his match, the rest of the participants did not have much time to rest, especially Qin Feng. Third fighting platform, Luan from the Mo clan versus Qin Feng from the Song clan. When the referee's voice rang out, thunderous cheers immediately rang out from the square. This was a battle between two dark horses. It would undoubtedly attract even more attention. It's your turn. Song Su looked at Qin Feng, whose face was still slightly pale, and said worriedly, "How confident are you?" After quickly swallowing a few high-quality healing pills and using the power of wood, Qin Feng's injuries recovered quite a bit. He looked at the expressionless Luan, shook his head, and said, "This person is somewhat unfathomable. I still don't know what methods he has, so it's hard to say." This was the truth. Luan was different from AI, Tianxing, and the others. They had long been famous. He also knew some of their techniques through the Song clan. However, this Luan had only appeared in Great Yin City recently as a relative of the Mo clan. As for his situation, other than the distant relatives of the Mo clan, there was no other information. Even if they were at the same level, an unknown opponent was much more dangerous than a known opponent. Moreover, this Luan was probably stronger than Li Hen, Yulei, Zhuang Hu, and the others. Coupled with his mysterious and unknown methods, Qin Feng really did not dare to make any guarantees. In this round, no matter who loses two matches in a row, it's impossible for them to be eliminated. Therefore, your battle with Lu and is unavoidable, Song Su said. Qin Feng nodded. He knew that although the battle of 8-7 was a best of 3, winning two matches would allow one to advance to the top 7. It did not mean that one would be eliminated if they lost two matches. 8-7 meant that only one person would be eliminated. In such a large-scale battle, it was impossible for only one person to lose two matches and win one match. Therefore, these people would continue to fight among themselves to determine the weakest. This was also the cruel nature of this kind of competition, indicating the intensity of the competition. Therefore, if those who lost the previous match continued to lose this time, the battle of 8-7 would not end. The battle between him and Lu was unavoidable. One of them had to fall. Therefore, I still suggest that you surrender this round. Impossible. Qin Feng shook his head. In a fair battle between those of the same generation, he would definitely not cower. This was his Tao heart. He would never cower. In the eyes of others, for the sake of benefits, he could make a choice, but he wouldn't. If he admitted defeat, it meant that he was afraid to fight. No matter what the reason was, it would create a certain psychological barrier. He would not allow such a barrier to appear. Furthermore, the demon, I had just told him that his injuries were almost fully recovered. If he was afraid that he could not win and retreated, then there was no need for him to continue fighting, because if there was a first, there would be a second. He would never admit defeat at a time like this when his strength was not damaged at all. He could be defeated, but he would not surrender. Song Su and the other Song family upper echelons were helpless. Qin Feng had already helped them reach this stage in Flame City's guild. No matter how he fought, they could not interfere. As the last pill was refined, Qin Feng lightly leaped onto the stage. He cupped his fists and said, Song family, Qin Feng, Mo family, Luin returned the greeting. However, there was no expression on his face. On the public square, countless people focused their gazes on this stage. This was not just a simple battle between two dark horses. There were also a few major clans that wanted to obstruct the Song clan. Hence, they would not allow Qin Feng to win 2 rounds consecutively. This also meant that Luin, who had easily defeated Zhuang, who would not consider the pros and cons. What he wanted to do was to defeat Qin Feng. Meanwhile, Qin Feng, as the son-in-law of the Song family, had not retreated. This also meant that he was determined to obtain a spot to enter the secret pavilion. This battle was, without a doubt, a true battle between a dragon and a tiger. In the plaza, the two stood facing each other. Compared to the fierce battles on the other 3 stages, this one was much calmer. The two simply stared at each other, neither taking action. The entire plaza was extremely quiet. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first? Luin broke the silence and asked in a calm and hoarse voice. Qin Feng's lowered hand slightly clenched, and the Sky Splitter axe appeared in his hand. He circulated his spiritual energy, bringing with him a powerful force. The corners of Luin's mouth seemed to twitch a little when he saw this. Black light surged in his hand as a 2-feet-long battle blade appeared. The battle blade was completely pitch black, and a sinister cold luster surged under the illumination of the light. Whoosh! Boom! In the next moment, the two moved at the same time. Like 2 human-shaped lightning bolts, they fiercely collided. Qin Feng's Sky Splitter axe slashed down horizontally, while Luin's saber swept out horizontally. The saber and the axe collided, and an ear-piercing sound rang out. Those who were slightly closer to the battle stage could not help but cover their ears. They could not bear the sharp sound. Immediately after, a wave of air swept out from the point of collision, hitting both of them. Being hit, Qin Feng gritted his teeth and endured it. The power of the Sky Splitter axe surged, and it fiercely chopped down. Clang! With a boom, a crack appeared on the hard ground. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. His opponent was so fast. Without any buffer, he could actually leave behind an afterimage. Luin mysteriously appeared not far from Qin Feng, and he suddenly pointed his finger. Dim finger! Streaks of black light burst out, shooting towards Qin Feng like raindrops. Qin Feng clenched his hands, and his spiritual energy rolled, turning into a huge spiritual energy shield. Rumble! The streaks of light fell on the shield, and like a stone thrown into a calm lake, waves of crazy ripples spread out. When the last streak of light dissipated, Qin Feng removed the spiritual energy shield and said indifferently, "Between you and me, there is no need to use this kind of move to test each other." Luin nodded deeply, and his palm shook. On the black saber, a red light bloomed, and in an instant, it became blood red, as if it was stained with blood. "Against you, I can't hold back at all." Luin's figure paused for a moment, and then he rushed towards Qin Feng with a rather strange pace. His speed was not fast, and could even be said to be slow. However, when Luin used this strange pace, Qin Feng felt that he had been locked on by his opponent, and there was no way he could avoid this attack. The blood in his body was faintly boiling. It had been a long time since he felt such a great threat from his peers. With a light shout, he rushed forward with the sky-splitting axe in hand. One was extremely fast, the other was slow, but at a certain moment, the two of them were miraculously on the same frequency. Every move, no matter fast or slow, appeared at the same time, giving people a very strange feeling. What kind of move is this? He actually forced his opponent into the rhythm of his attack. An older expert spoke out. The Mo family's Lu and is not simple. If the Song family's son-in-law doesn't have a way to restrain himself, I'm afraid he will be defeated. Bang! Luin swept out his saber. and Qin Feng's sky-splitting axe chopped down. Rumble. The sharp saber radiance surged wildly, causing the void to vibrate and distort violently. Chapter 461. The Pinnacle Showdown. This made him feel incredulous. Different speeds, but the result was the same. Is he trying to force me into his rhythm of attack? Qin Feng stared at Lu En's footsteps with a serious look. In the exchange, just now, he clearly felt that his attacks were not as smooth as before. It was as if he had turned from a veteran to a newbie in an instant. Lu En still used that strange footwork to close in. Qin Feng used his extreme speed to dodge. At the same time, he used the Divine Dragon technique as if a divine dragon was on him. However, no matter how fast he was or how strong his attacks were, he could not find his own rhythm. It was as if no matter how he attacked, it was imperceptibly changing according to Lu En's moves. In the next moment, Qin Feng pushed his speed to the limit. He turned into a human-shaped lightning bolt and shuttled through the void. His figure was flickering in and out of sight. Lu En still maintained his strange footwork and kept swinging his saber. At first glance, he seemed to be practicing his saber technique. However, if one were to sense it carefully, they would discover that every time Lu En swung his saber, the space around the saber edge would ripple violently. This was caused by the exchange of blows between the two. Their control of power had reached an appalling level. Before the sound of the collision of the two weapons could be heard, the terrifying power contained in the two weapons had already shattered the void. Even the sound of the collision could not be heard. Only when both sides were able to accurately control the power of each blow and the point of contact could they achieve such a result. On the battle stage, there was only one figure dancing. Around him, the space rippled continuously and disappeared in a flash. Ordinary people could not see the exchange of blows between the two at all. However, this kind of exchange was extremely thrilling for both sides. There was no strong momentum or violent energy fluctuation. It was so ordinary, but there was a suffocating pressure. Qin Feng kept flickering in the void. He was shocked. This Lu En was probably the most terrifying opponent he had ever encountered among his peers. He had used his light wings and combined his attacks with the Divine Dragon technique, but there was no way to break through his opponent's defense. At the same time, Lu En was also secretly shocked. The Heavenly Battle Blade domain was one of his strongest trump cards. Anyone who fell into the domain would be drawn into his rhythm of attack and quickly lose. Previously, Zhuanghu was like this. He was unable to display his full strength in his rhythm and had no choice but to admit defeat. But this time it did not work. Both of them were fighting at their own pace and were not affected. In other words, Qin Feng's force had broken his domain. Lu En held his saber and stared at Qin Feng with a determined gaze. That was an aura of invincibility. It was not very domineering, but people could not help but raise their eyebrows. Even Qin Feng was stunned. It had to be said that Lu En at this moment made even Qin Feng feel a lot of pressure. Qin Feng, only one of us can survive this battle. Lu En raised his saber and said softly. Qin Feng frowned and asked, "Why do you have such strong enmity towards me?" Before the battle, he could not feel it, but now he could feel a strong killing intent from Lu En. This made him puzzled. When did he offend such a person? Su Li, Lu En said. So you are in cahoots with him. Qin Feng finally understood. No wonder the other party had such great enmity towards him. Lu En shook his head and said, "That kind of trash is not qualified to stand side by side with me. But I once owed a person a favor. He personally came to me and asked me to take your life. In this battle, killing you is returning that favor. Otherwise, if I am killed by you, it is because I am not strong enough." "Okay," Qin Feng said. Facing such an expert, he had nothing to say. He could only use the most powerful battle to settle this. Rumble. On the battle stage, the two people fiercely fought. Spiritual power roared and surged, bringing about a raging wind. Saber chi and axe chi surged horizontally and vertically, shaking the sound of sonic booms. The two people fought very quickly. In just a few breaths, they had exchanged hundreds of moves. This was completely different from the previous battle. Neither side held back nor controlled. It was a completely head-on confrontation. It was purely a competition of strength. There was no skill to speak of. This kind of collision did not last for a long time. Both of them were slightly out of breath, their hair was messy, and their spiritual energies were uncontrollable. This was the result of the uncontrollable collapse of the spiritual energies caused by the violent collision. Rumble, saber, and axe, their spiritual power fiercely collided. The two people's palms also collided, causing a violent explosion in the air. Destructive shock waves spread. The two people retreated dozens of meters at the same time. Luwen's hair was disheveled, and his spiritual power was restless. His eyes were locked on Qin Feng. He let go of the blood-red saber and moved slowly in front of him. Every time he moved, he left an illusory saber shadow. When a number of saber shadows reached 36, he roared and pushed his hands forward, causing countless saber shadows to shoot out. 36 celestial blades. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. The spiritual power in his body surged. The black and white spiritual power ran wildly, forming a huge black and white light wheel. Yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Ping ping pang. 36 saber shadows rushed out, turning into a torrent of steel, fiercely attacking. Yin-yang Tai Chi will shook violently. Black and white light flashed wildly and slowly rotated. A mechanical sound came out, resisting the terrible saber chi above the saber shadows. As the saber shadows disappeared, Qin Feng's hand seals changed. A big black and white hand stretched out from the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Yin-yang hand. Luwen's expression did not change. He stretched out his palm, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth quickly gathered. Then he slapped out. Celestial blade palm. A big hand completely condensed by spiritual power stretched out. Inside the big hand, there was a saber shape. A sharp saber chi spread out from the big hand. Boom! The two big hands stretched out together, causing a big explosion in the air. Fierce energy spread out like a flood. As the big hands fought against each other, the power contained in each hand was reduced little by little. Seeing this, Qin Feng changed his hand seals again. Yin-yang hand, yin-yang seal. Boom! The yin-yang hand that was about to dissipate suddenly shook violently. In the palm, yin-yang seal appeared and shot toward Lu, and his expression changed slightly. He quickly retreated, put his hands together, and then suddenly separated them. A black line the length of a chopstick appeared, with a terrible sharpness that could cut through space. Firmament line. Whoosh! This black line quickly shot out, as if it was splitting the heavens. In an instant, it cut apart the yin-yang seal, which had an astonishing offensive power. It turned into spiritual light and dissipated. Moreover, it was still aimed at Qin Feng's throat. Qin Feng's pupil shrank. It was this move that forced Zhuang Hu to admit defeat. Primitive war body. Qin Feng shouted in his heart. His body was quickly wrapped in chaotic light. He put his hands in front of his throat to block the firmament line. Clang! A sharp sound of metal was heard, and sparks sputtered. The firmament line disappeared. Qin Feng lowered his arms with a dignified expression. Although the primitive war body blocked the firmament line, the sharp cutting intent made his arms tremble slightly. So powerful. Qin Feng sighed. He had to admit that this move was terrible. Even a primitive war body was almost penetrated by it. Since he learned the primitive war body, he had never been in such a situation. Chapter 462. Forbidden art. The power of Lu's technique shocked Qin Feng. Even his primitive war body was almost unable to defend against it. This showed how terrifying this firmament line was. However, this did not make Qin Feng afraid. Instead, his fighting spirit was high. He had not met such an evenly matched expert for a long time. Luwen looked at this scene and frowned imperceptibly. He muttered to himself, "Even this move is useless?" He waved his hand, and the saber that was stabbed into the ground at an angle immediately fell into his hand. Then, he slowly closed his eyes and formed an ancient seal with one hand. Qin Feng's eyes. At this moment, he clearly felt that the dangerous aura emitted from Luan's body was stronger than before. Luan slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, his black and white eyes were filled with a bloody light. A miniature saber was imprinted in his eyes. A saber seal also appeared between his eyebrows. Among my peers, there are only a few people who can force me into this state except for you. His voice was somewhat hoarse. At this moment, Luan's fighting spirit was so strong that it was like a volcanic eruption. Blazing saber light surged around his body. His essence, energy, and spirit were raised to the peak. He slowly stretched out a finger and pointed at Qin Feng from afar. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth and endless saber Qi madly converged. Light of the heavenly dipper. As the hoarse voice fell, a bloody light swept out from Luan's fingertip. The whole world seemed to be silent for a moment. In a trance, it was as if the whole sky dimmed for a moment, as if all the energy had been sucked out. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. He suddenly pointed his finger. A ray of light collided with that ray of light. Then, a second ray, a third ray. Rays of light overlapped. Qin Feng had used the heaven-devouring finger 4 times in a row. This was already the limit of what he could use. At the same time, the yin-yang tai chi will appeared and slowly rotated. Boom! Almost in an instant, the first heaven-devouring finger shattered. Then, the second, the third, in the span of a breath, the 4 heaven-devouring fingers, which contained a violent power, all exploded. They couldn't form an effective obstruction at all. At most, they could only slow down the attack by a little. Following a loud bang, the light collided heavily with the yin-yang tai chi wheel. The entire battle stage seemed to tremble for a moment. Soon after, an endless shock wave spread out and a sonic boom resounded continuously. Crack! A crack appeared, causing Qin Feng to frown. He had not expected that even the yin-yang tai chi wheel would not be able to block such an attack. Staring at the yin-yang tai chi wheel with more and more cracks, Qin Feng took a deep breath and slapped forward with the yin-yang seal. The yin-yang palm slowly slapped forward and then grabbed the white light. The 5 fingers clenched, and the yin-yang seal exploded, attacking the white light. When the big hand and the white light dissipated at the same time, a crimson saber appeared above Luan's head, surrounded by wisps of blood energy. At the same time, black and white light flowed above Qin Feng, and a long black and white arrow appeared, surging with yin-yang qi. The saber was blood red, as if it was made of blood. There were faint blood-red patterns on it. If one looked carefully, the patterns seemed to be in the shape of dragons, as if a real dragon was engraved on it. A dense bloody aura rose from the warblade. It was like steam formed from heating, causing it to appear a little more illusory. If one looked carefully, the saber seemed to be vibrating slightly, but the amplitude was not large. It was even difficult to see with the naked eye, because that little amplitude was completely covered by the distorted void. From afar, it looked like it had landed on water without a trace of ripples. The saber vibrated slightly, and ripples that were difficult to see with the naked eye rippled. Above Qin Feng, black and white spiritual energy surged, like a vast ocean, surging violently, and the sound of waves hitting the shore could be heard, shocking one's mind. In the middle of the sea, a long arrow about 3 meters long condensed, its entire body shrouded in black and white light, and a heart-palpitating power slowly rippled from it. The two stared at each other and then attacked at the same time. Big Dipper, Death Saber, Yin-Yang Mutual Arrow. The saber and the arrow shot out at the same time, each with a wisp of light behind them. They were like 2 meteorites, colliding heavily with each other. Rumble. The tip of the saber and the arrow collided, and it was like a needle against an awl. The blood-red energy film and the black and white energy film surged out at the same time, resisting each other. The air did not have time to escape, and it kept exploding. The space there was in a distorted state. In the silence, where the saber and the arrow collided, faint cracks appeared in the space, like the sharp claws of a fierce beast, revealing a ferocious and terrifying aura. Almost at the same time, Lewin's right arm turned into a black dragon claw, and the huge dragon claw tore through the air, fiercely clawing down. A large shadow descended, and Qin Feng waved his arm, and the savage peak shot out, rapidly expanding and rushed over like a small mountain, bringing with it an incomparably heavy feeling. Black Dragon Ripping Hand, Savage Peak. The saber and the arrow, the claw and the peak, collided one after another, causing the space to distort to the extreme and suddenly break apart. Heaven and earth were silent, and in the next moment, when the four forces collided to the extreme and exploded, the entire fighting ring shook violently, and an indescribable shock wave burst out crazily. After a full 3 minutes, the rioting fighting ring slowly calmed down, and with the dissipation of the shock wave, the situation inside was exposed to the eyes of the people. These two are really King tenacious. The crowd could not help but gasp. After releasing so many big moves consecutively, they were still able to hold on. Lewin's eyes drooped slightly. He did not expect Qin Feng to be so strong. He had used almost everything he had learned in his life, but he still could not gain the upper hand. Since this move won't work, I'll use that move. Lewin stared at Qin Feng for a long time, then took a deep breath, and a ruthless look flashed across his eyes, as if he had made some kind of decision. The oppressive fluctuations around him slowly receded, and all the spiritual energy was absorbed into his body. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and the spiritual energy in his body began to circulate rapidly. He actually forced him to this step. Where did this young man come from? Clan leader Mo frowned slightly, and his eyes flickered. Obviously, the situation was out of his control. He originally thought that this person would be able to kill Qin Feng, but he did not expect the situation to turn out like this. Are you going to use that move? Lilin, be careful. The crowd below the fighting ring looked at Lewin, who had suddenly calmed down and were somewhat puzzled. For a moment, they did not know what was going on. However, some of the more sensitive people noticed that the air seemed to be filled with the smell of blood. Oh no, could it be that move? Song Su stared at Lewin, and his face suddenly changed as he cried out involuntarily. Song Su's reaction naturally attracted the attention of Song Yuan, Song Shui, and the others. Especially when they saw the change in his expression, they were all stunned. Brother, what move are you talking about? After staring at Lewin for a long time, Song Su sighed deeply and said in a deep voice, Have you heard that the Mo clan accidentally obtained a forbidden art? When the two words forbidden art entered their ears, the pretty faces of Song Yuan and the others changed drastically. It was not a secret in Great Yin City that the Mo clan had obtained a forbidden art decades ago. However, forbidden arts had always been the most taboo thing for cultivators. 8 or 9 out of 10 ordinary cultivators would fail and end up suffering from chi deviation. Even if they succeeded, they would be devoured by the forbidden art and die from madness. They had never heard of anyone from the Mo clan cultivating it. Therefore, as time passed, no one took it seriously. They did not expect that this distant relative of theirs had cultivated such a forbidden art. Chapter 463. Forbidden Technique. Endless Blood Prison. The Song family members' expressions changed. The smell of blood from Lu and's body grew thicker and thicker. It was very similar to the forbidden technique. Should we withdraw the young master from the competition? One of the Song family's upper echelons asked the several elders. If Qin Feng continued, he would most likely die here. Forbidden techniques were taboo existences in any place. Generally speaking, very few people would practice this kind of forbidden technique that could harm the enemy by 800 while harming 1,000 of their own. Moreover, forbidden techniques were extremely difficult to cultivate. A single mistake could result in a backlash from the forbidden technique, causing one to go berserk. At the very least, one would be severely injured. At the very least, one could go insane and die. The word forbidden was enough to explain everything. Hence, although forbidden techniques were frighteningly powerful, most people would not practice them. However, once someone practiced them and achieved initial success, their power would be terrifying. They were truly worried that Qin Feng would suffer a mishap if he clashed with Luan in such a situation. After watching one battle after another, they had long since acknowledged Qin Feng's strength. Young master, Luan has used a forbidden technique. You can't block it. Leave the opportunity for the next battle. The Song family's grand elder secretly transmitted his voice to Qin Feng. However, Qin Feng acted as if he did not hear anything as he stared fixedly at Luan. On the high platform, the leaders of the various clans were also staring at Luan, whose bloody scent was getting stronger and stronger. Some had complicated expressions, some frowned, and some looked forward to it. It seems that the Mo family has produced many geniuses. He has even succeeded in cultivating a forbidden technique, clan leader Yi said in an inexplicable tone. Hearing this, the Mo clan leader faintly smiled. Many people in my clan have tried to study it. However, due to the fear of the forbidden technique, when they try to cultivate it, they couldn't grasp the main points. Therefore, no one succeeded in cultivating it. As for whether or not Shaoan succeeded in cultivating it, I don't know. Flame City's intention is to learn from each other. Isn't using a forbidden technique in a match a little too much? Song Sanyun asked with a grim expression. Injuries are inevitable in a battle. Furthermore, using your strongest strength to defeat your opponent, isn't that the greatest respect you can show your opponent? Clan leader Mo smiled faintly. Hearing this, Song Sanyun snorted coldly and ignored him. On the battle platform, the fluctuations around Lu An's body became calmer and calmer. However, his eyes suddenly became bloodshot, and a strong smell of blood emitted from his body. The crimson saber became even redder, as if it could drip blood. Luan's face became paler and paler as the battle saber's luster thickened. It was obvious that this attack had consumed a lot of his energy. Qin Feng's complexion turned extremely solemn. He didn't expect that Luan actually had a forbidden technique. He once heard from the devil that a forbidden technique was a very terrifying technique. The so-called forbidden technique, also known as the forbidden domain, referred to the ability to display an attack power that was many times greater than one's own for a short period of time. However, due to its terrifying destructive power and great damage to one's body and mind, it was classified as a forbidden technique. Originally, forbidden techniques were also a type of battle technique. However, due to the requirement of the user and the damage it could inflict, it far exceeded the damage it could inflict on the enemy. Thus, as other battle techniques and spells were created and popularized, forbidden techniques were gradually resisted. Due to the prohibition, these powerful spells slowly faded from people's sight. Slowly, these destructive spells gradually became forbidden techniques. Very few people practiced them. Moreover, even if they did, they didn't have a good ending. If they didn't fail, they would suffer from chi deviation, or their mind would be corroded and they would go crazy and die. As for the classification of forbidden techniques, there were very few records in ancient books. There was only one sentence that was passed down. The forbidden technique of cultivation is extremely powerful. The heavens and earth do not allow it. The user of the forbidden technique will suffer a heavenly tribulation. The cultivator will suffer a heavenly tribulation. This was the reason why forbidden techniques were so terrifying. Qin Feng slowly exhaled. His mind was raised to the extreme. This was the first time he encountered an opponent who possessed forbidden techniques. His body trembled. Luan's face was pale, as if he was a dead man. However, his blood-red eyes were filled with burning fanaticism and excitement. Qin Feng, I thought I wouldn't have the chance to use this move. I didn't expect that I would use it on you today. This is my fortune, but also your misfortune. Luan smiled bitterly. His blood-red eyes stared at Qin Feng. In the next moment, he suddenly raised his dark red battle blade and slashed at Qin Feng. Forbidden technique. endless blood prison. As the battle blade slashed down, a blood-red sea erupted like a tide. An extremely strong smell of blood filled the air. Even from far away, one could smell the nauseating smell of blood. The blood-red sea almost filled half of the battle platform. The entire sky seemed to be dyed red. The blood-red sea roared. In a flash, it enveloped Qinfeng. This was a blood-red world. The soil was soaked in blood, and the sky was dyed red. The nauseating smell of blood filled every corner of this world. In the blood-red water that permeated the entire world, the eerie white bones of drifters could be seen everywhere. It made one's heart tremble. It was like a ghastly hell. Qinfeng stood in this blood-red world. His face was extremely solemn. In this place, he felt a strong sense of danger. In this blood-red world, the smell of blood seemed to have a corrosive power. It was as if it could even corrode a person's spiritual energy. Blood flowed everywhere. The smell of blood almost turned into a solid blood-red air current. Fortunately, Qinfeng was here. If an ordinary person encountered this scene, they would have been scared silly. Splash! In the flowing blood river, a huge blood-red snake poked its head out. Its pair of blood-red snake eyes locked onto Qinfeng. Then, with a hiss, it shot towards Qinfeng. Seeing this, Qinfeng took out the sky-splitting axe and smashed it heavily on the snake's head. It directly exploded, and blood filled the sky. Whoosh! 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 A huge snake was smashed. In the blood river, blood rolled. Soon, more huge snakes rushed out of the water. Hundreds and thousands of huge snakes attacked together like a bloody rain. Yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. With a loud shout, a black and white light wheel appeared around Qinfeng. The light wheel rotated and blocked the incoming huge blood-red snakes. On the light wheel, blood light spewed out. The huge blood-red snakes exploded one after another. None of them could break through the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel's blockade. However, there were too many huge blood-red snakes. It was as if there was an endless stream of them. No matter how strong the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel's defense was, it could not withstand such consumption. Crack! Finally, at a certain moment, a crack appeared on the black and white light wheel. Crack! Crack! Under the impact of the huge blood-red snakes, the crack grew bigger and more numerous. Looking at this scene, Qinfeng's face changed slightly. He thought to himself, this should be a blood-red world created by his forbidden technique. Fighting against these things in the blood-red world is undoubtedly fighting against this world. The world is endless, but human strength is limited. If I want to break this world, I can't rely on brute force. Bang! Chapter 464. Forbidden Art versus Tao, Yin Mode. The moment the yin-yang wheel shattered, Qinfeng summoned his light wings and quickly flew into the sky to avoid the giant blood-red snakes. Qinfeng rose into the sky and looked down at the blood-red world. As time passed, his body was gradually covered by a layer of blood-red film, and even his eyes were bloodshot. Whoosh! Qinfeng also quickly became aware of this situation. His heart was immediately startled as he hurriedly summoned the ancient, desolate spiritual flame and enveloped him. What is this place? Even the smell of blood can corrode my mind. Qinfeng said in his heart. Just a moment ago, he could clearly feel that the killing intent hidden in his body was about to break out of his control. The blood-red aura floating in the air could corrode one's mind. Fortunately, this kind of evil thing was most afraid of yang flames. When the ancient spiritual desolate flame appeared, it evaporated the invading blood-red aura. Boom! Suddenly, a giant blood-red hand slammed down from the sky. If Qinfeng's reaction was not fast enough, and he dodged in advance, he would have been in a miserable state. Boom! 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 In the sky, attacks of various shapes constantly appeared. Although these attacks were not very strong, there were too many of them, and they caused Qinfeng a lot of trouble. Qinfeng flapped his light wings, and the wind whistled. He quickly moved in the sky, and his eyes constantly swept around, looking for a flaw. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, and he looked even further away. The blood-red aura was so dense that it was almost like a pool of blood. In the depths of the blood-red aura, there was a figure sitting there. That figure was extremely similar to Lu, and could the source be there? Qin Feng silently mused. After that, he no longer stayed behind and rapidly rushed over. Breaking through all obstacles, Qin Feng charged to the place where the blood-red aura was the densest. At this moment, he could barely see the face of the figure sitting there. It was indeed Luin. His body was surrounded by an extremely dense blood aura. Within the blood aura, there were all kinds of wriggling shapes, some of which were identical to the ones that had attacked Qin Feng. Qin Feng glanced at it and quickly understood that it was all Luin's doing. His encounter here was all planned by him. The source of this world's power was him. As long as he was defeated, the blood-red world would naturally cease to exist. At this moment, Luin also opened his eyes in the blood-red world. He looked at Qin Feng in surprise. A while later, he smiled and said, "You've come a little earlier than I expected. However, regardless of whether you come early or late, the ending will be the same. I am the ruler of this world. Here, I'm everything. It's only an illusory world." Qin Feng sneered and slashed down with the sky-splitting axe. White spiritual energy with blazing heat slashed towards Luin. Seeing this, Luin smiled faintly. With a flick of his finger, a blood-red aura turned into a large hand and caught the white spiritual energy. No matter how much it sizzled, the blood-red hand remained motionless. In the next moment, it directly crushed it. "I said that I am the ruler of everything here. Of course, that includes you." With that, Luin flicked his finger again. 3 rays of blood-red light shot out. Qin Feng raised his axe to meet it. His figure retreated more than 100 meters, and his blood aura was in turmoil from the impact. Only then did he manage to block the 3 rays of blood-red light. With a dignified expression, Qin Feng stared at Luin, his heart trembling. In this place, Luin's power had been greatly enhanced. It was as if he was the ruler of this place. A casual attack was more than twice as powerful as before. It shouldn't be. Could it be that he was really fighting against the entire world? While Qin Feng was shocked, Luin didn't give him any time to think. With a wave of his hand, a blood-red waterfall of more than 10 meters in size flew towards him. That kind of power was enough to easily obliterate an ordinary half-step 9th-level Heaven Realm Master. The huge blood-red waterfall, carrying a powerful energy, cut through the sky and whistled. Qin Feng stared at the huge blood-red waterfall with a dignified expression. What made him so dignified was not the terrifying blood-red waterfall. It was Luin's calm appearance. His attacks seemed to be easy, as if it could be done with a wave of his hand. If this continued, he was afraid that he would be dragged to death before he could even get close to the other party. Dao Yin mode. Qin Feng directly activated the Dao Yin mode. In an instant, he had a general perception of this endless blood prison. His body shook slightly, and an extremely tyrannical power was born from his flesh and blood. Then, it quickly rushed towards the blood-red waterfall. Heaven-devouring finger. Qin Feng pointed out with his finger. At the same time, he displayed the Divine Emperor's aura, and his aura soared to the late stage of the small heaven realm. The huge blood-red waterfall was broken by the finger light, and Qin Feng's figure flashed out and rushed towards Luin without stopping. Not bad, but how did it suddenly become so much stronger? Luin's eyes revealed a trace of surprise, and then he smiled slightly. However, no matter how strong Qin Feng was, as long as he stepped into this world, he would never be his opponent. His hands quickly formed a seal, and the blood-red sea behind him violently tumbled, setting off stormy waves. A moment later, a huge beast shadow emerged. The beast shadow was in the shape of a giant bear, and its huge bear paw directly slapped towards Qin Feng. Under the bear paw, the air was squeezed and burst. Yin Yang Seal. The black and white spirit chi condensed into a Tai Chi shape, and yin and yang hugged each other, forming a yin-yang seal that smashed towards the bear paw. Bang! A dull sound came out, and the yin-yang seal broke under the bear paw. At the same time, the beast's shadow became fainter and fainter. Heavenly Dragon Tail Whip. Qin Feng's body rotated, and his leg fiercely swung. The dragon tail swung, and the dragon roared, shattering the giant bear's shadow. The remaining power whizzed towards Lewin. Seeing this, Lewin raised his hand, and a blood-red light curtain appeared in front of him, blocking the dragon tail. Tyrant Dragon Claw. Tiger Killing Strike. Qin Feng displayed the Divine Dragon skill and the Myriad Beast Summoning skill. On his right hand, a tiger's roar shook the forest, as if a real fierce tiger had appeared. It pounced forward, and a fierce tiger's aura filled the air, shattering the blood-red light curtain. A huge dragon claw appeared on his other hand, and he slapped towards Lewin without any hindrance. Good. You're the only one who can arouse my interest. Lewin laughed and waved his battle saber. In an instant, a blood-red wind blew, and the sea of blood behind him roiled. Streaks of blood-red energy whizzed in the direction of the saber's swing. The blood-red wind not only shattered the dragon claw, but also sent Qin Feng flying dozens of meters away. The moment Qin Feng was sent flying, he waved his arm, and the 10,000 beasts heavenly pearl appeared. Then it suddenly exploded, and all kinds of beasts roared, and a terrifying shock wave spread out. Lewin's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Qin Feng to be able to secretly condense such a terrifying attack in a situation where he was continuously using big moves. If he did not use the forbidden skill, he might not be a match for him. Small tricks. However, he did not care too much at this moment. With a thought, the blood-red water surged and blocked the impact of the 10,000 beasts heavenly pearl. After stabilizing his body in the air, Qin Feng looked at Lewin with an ugly expression. This guy's defense was almost unshakable. At such a close distance, the 10,000 beasts heavenly pearl could not cause any damage to him. He could easily mobilize the energy of this world. With his current strength, it seemed difficult to defeat him. Is this all you can do? If that's the case, then it's my turn to attack. Lewin chuckled. The seal in his hand suddenly changed, and the blood-red sea behind him suddenly became violet. Waves surged into the sky, and blood-red pillars of light soared into the sky. Each pillar of light contained extremely powerful energy. There were a total of 10 blood-red pillars of light, and a rather oppressive aura spread out. It caused the blood-red space to tremble slightly. Go! Lewin waved his hand, and the 10 pillars of light turned into 10 blood-red lights that were as thick as a wrist. They were filled with terrifying energy, and they roared towards Qin Feng. 10 blood-red lights attacked at the same time. This power was too terrifying. Qin Feng's expression was solemn. He slowly took a breath and formed a seal with his hands. The yin-yang Tai Chi wheel enveloped his surroundings. The light wheel spun rapidly, and black and white light exploded. An extremely heavy aura spread out, as heavy as a mountain. Boom! At the same time, the blood-red lights also rushed over and bombarded the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Suddenly, the black and white light wheel trembled violently. 1, 2, 3. 3 blood-red lights attacked the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Finally, a crack appeared on the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel. Boom! The 4th blood-red light attacked, and the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel was covered with cracks. When the 5th blood-red light attacked, the yin-yang Tai Chi wheel finally reached its limit and shattered. Yin-yang seal. Yin-yang hand. The black and white seal and the black and white hand each dispersed a blood-red light. Qin Feng's figure retreated rapidly. The 8th and 9th blood-red lights attacked together. The 2 blood-red lights merged into one, and their power suddenly increased dramatically. Sky-devouring finger. A finger light shot out from Qin Feng's fingertip and hit the blood-red light. However, the sky-devouring finger soon exploded. Qin Feng's light wings flapped wildly, and he quickly retreated. At the same time, the yin-yang arrow appeared above his head, and then shot out, colliding with the blood-red light. In an instant, heaven and earth shook. When the blood-red light was dispersed, the yin-yang arrow was also dispersed. Cough, cough. Chapter 465. Blood Prison. Qin Feng's body was a little weak from the shock. For a moment, he could not mobilize the spiritual power in his body. Fortunately, he was still in the Tao Yin mode. He quickly activated the primitive war body and forcibly used his physical body to withstand the impact of the last bloodlight. Tyrant Dragon's Claw. Boom! Qin Feng threw out a punch. A dragon's roar reverberated and dragon scales appeared on the surface of his fist. He then heavily collided with the bloody light. A tyrannical force poured down and his mind trembled. He was unable to control the 10,000 beast summoning technique. The light wings disappeared, and he directly fell from above. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Qin Feng heavily fell to the ground. He stretched out his trembling hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes grew colder and colder. On his body, streaks of bloody qi wriggled, trying to erode his body. Whoosh! The ancient spiritual desolate flame surged out and evaporated the blood-colored air currents. Looking at Qin Feng, who was still not crushed under the impact of the 10 bloody lights, Luan's face turned slightly solemn. His opponent's strength had somewhat exceeded his expectations. The 10 bloody lights were connected. It was hard to imagine how Qin Feng could prepare so many big moves in such a short time and block them one by one. In fact, no one could do this under normal circumstances. Every attack required spiritual energy and time to prepare. It was difficult to continuously attack in a short period of time. At their level, 3 or 4 big moves in a row was the limit. This was the overbearing aspect of the Tao Yin mode. It couldn't increase one's strength, but it could allow the caster to be in a special, clear, and strange state, allowing the caster to circulate his various strengths to a shocking extent without wasting the slightest bit of energy or spirit energy. His actions were smooth and fluid, and everything was done in one go. Luan slowly exhaled. His hands slowly formed a seal. His body trembled slightly, and there was an unconcealable tiredness in his eyes. Obviously, he could not stay in this state of control for a long time. Qin Feng's eyes suddenly shot out an almost tangible sharp light. Naturally, he had a panoramic view of Lu and situation. At the same time, he had also found his opponent's weakness. In this space, Luan had a certain degree of control, but no power in this world came without a reason. If you wanted to obtain power, you had to pay a certain price. Luan had used a forbidden technique to create this world and had the authority to rule it. However, as long as it was a forbidden technique, there would be a backlash. Luan, could not control this world forever. Once he suffered a backlash, he would immediately fall into a seriously injured state. Therefore, there was a time limit to how long he could control this world. He was invincible in this world that he had created. If one wanted to defeat him, other than overwhelming him with absolute strength, one could only exhaust him until he suffered a backlash and lost control of this world. What Qin Feng needed to do now was to stall for time as much as possible so that he would slowly lose control of this world. At that time, he would not need to do anything, and this space would naturally shatter. I know what you're planning, but... Luan stared at Qin Feng with a pale face. Then he smiled cruelly. But do you think that I will give you a chance after using this technique? Haha, the last blow will cause me to fall into a seriously injured state. However, I think that you will be in a worse state than me. Forbidden technique. Endless blood prison finger. The sea of blood surged wildly. Countless blood-colored air currents rose. At this moment, the power of the sea of blood seemed to have been sucked out. It condensed into a blood-red finger in the sky. The finger was not huge, about the size of a normal person's finger. However, it was blood-red as if it was made of blood. A terrifying aura spread out. As soon as the blood-red finger appeared, the sea of blood below seemed to evaporate and quickly dissipated. At the same time, Luin's face became paler and paler. However, his eyes became brighter and brighter. Obviously, Luin intended to use all the power of the forbidden technique to determine the winner. Swoosh! When Luin's seal reached the last one, the light of chaos flickered. Qin Feng's figure suddenly appeared in front of him like a ghost. Luin's face changed slightly. He tapped the blood below with the tip of his foot and retreated rapidly. At the same time, the blood chi around him turned into a blood net and blocked in front of him. Slash! However, no matter how many blood nets there were, they were all torn apart by the black shadow in the most brutal manner. Huh! Luin shouted softly. The seal in his hand suddenly condensed. The blood-red finger above suddenly shook and then shot towards Qin Feng's back. It's over, Qin Feng. Luin chuckled. Blood continued to flow from the corners of his mouth as a crazed look appeared on his face. Yes, it's time to end this, he softly muttered. He could feel the terrifying aura behind him. This attack had already surpassed the limits of the half-step 9th level heavenly stage. It truly possessed the power of the 9th level heavenly stage. Let alone him, even the members of the Yen City Association, including AI, Tianxing, and Zhou Mo, would not be able to withstand this blood-red finger. The blood-red finger howled as it arrived, seeming to tear apart the sky as an ear-piercing screech rang out. Even if you want to admit defeat now, it's already too late. Qin Feng, you better cherish your last moments. I've already said that in this battle, only one of us can survive, and that person seems to be me. Luin let out a miserable laugh as his figure rapidly retreated. As long as he could delay until the blood-red finger arrived, everything would be over and he would be the victor. Yes, it's too late, even if you admit defeat. Qin Feng stared at Luin as a strange smile appeared on his face. With a wave of his arm, numerous light red water droplets appeared. Looking at Qin Feng's strange smile, Luin's face faintly twitched. In the next instant, his expression abruptly changed. He did not know when he had fallen into the water, but it was now difficult for him to move. Qin Feng took advantage of this gap to quickly rush into the sky water domain. What's going on? Luin roared as a look of horror appeared on his face. It's over, Luin, Qin Feng softly muttered. As he spat out a mouthful of blood, his speed suddenly increased. He quickly closed in on Luin, who had temporarily lost his ability to move. Then, he threw a punch at Luin's chest under the latter's wildly changing gaze. Ha, even so, what can you change? You can't beat me. Luin gave up struggling as it was futile. He shouted at Qin Feng ferociously. Qin Feng's face was expressionless as his fist ruthlessly smashed into Luin's chest. At the same time, the yin-yang tai chi wheel appeared once again, blocking his back. Pucci! Luin's face instantly turned pale. However, his attack still carried a terrifying power as it shattered the yin-yang tai chi wheel and finally landed heavily on Qin Feng's back. The light of primal chaos flickered crazily as it resisted the destructive shockwave. Endless blood prison. Explode. Luin roared. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.